Chapter 4574. Although there was no definite connection between these two incidents on the surface, because the time of occurrence was too close, any normal person would feel that there were many doubts. Therefore, after Senior Brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran were puzzled, they immediately reported the situation of Ma Dafu to the Law Enforcement Hall and let the masters of the Law Enforcement Hall personally intervene in the investigation. The Law Enforcement Hall acted very quickly. Almost as soon as they received the report, they took Ma Dafu away for investigation. However, unexpectedly, this investigation lasted for half a month, but there was no specific result. In the end, the Law Enforcement Hall Master Ramjia made the final decision. He said that the 15 disciples of the 3 pavilions who died that night all died of a unique emergency that had never been seen before. The source of the emergency needed to be further confirmed with the Dan Hall. However, all of this had nothing to do with Ma Dafu. Ma Dafu was just hiding his strength. Other than that, there was no violation of the rules. This was the final conclusion of Ramjia, so naturally no one would question it. Even though Senior Brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran still felt a little strange, they did not dare to question it. Therefore, after Ma Dafu was locked up in the Law Enforcement Hall for half a month, he finally left unscathed. This matter was over, but since then, Ma Dafu changed his previous attitude of obscurity and began to become arrogant and do whatever he wanted. As an unprecedented, nascent soul stage newcomer, it was simply a pipe dream for Senior Brother Ku Bai and Xiao Ran to want to control him with the strength of the Foundation Establishment stage. One was the 3rd Pavilion Master of the Welcoming Pavilion, and the other was the great Senior Brother who was in charge of the newcomer. Not only could they not control Ma Dafu, the newcomer of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, but because of the previous report, they were hated by Ma Dafu. They were repeatedly bullied by Ma Dafu to the point that they could not step down in public. It could be said that they were humiliated. The other higher-ups of the Welcoming Pavilion, including the Pavilion Master Hu Yun, all looked on coldly and did not care. Even the higher-ups of the Welcome Pavilion had such an attitude. Needless to say, the Blue Cloud Pavilion situation was even worse. Whether it was Senior Brother Bitter or Xiao Ran, their only backer was Lin Yi. Now that Lin Yi wasn't around, it could be said that they didn't even have one person to rely on within the Blue Cloud Pavilion. Not only did the higher-ups of the Blue Cloud Pavilion not stand up for them, they even praised them and stood against them. With such a momentum, he would undoubtedly become the king of the newcomers, especially after he skipped the outer sanctum competition like Lin Yi did in the past and directly displayed his splendor in the inner sanctum competition. It was said that the upper echelons of Blue Cloud Pavilion had unanimously recognized Ma Duanxiang as their future hope, and had even decided on him as the successor of Blue Cloud Pavilion. In terms of strength, the opponent was a nascent soul stage expert. In terms of status, the opponent was the successor of Blue Cloud Pavilion. No matter which one it was, the people present were far from being able to contend against Ma Duanxiang. It was obvious that they had fallen into a completely one-sided oppressive situation. Liu Bianren and the others had no way to deal with it, and could only passively take the beating. Looking at your posture, it seems that you have accepted your fate, right? Ma Duanxiang glanced at the crowd and sneered. How boring. I thought that you would have a bit of backbone, but I didn't expect you to be so tactful. Or do you think that I will let you go just like that? Haha, don't be too naive. Since I said that I will cripple all of you today, then I will absolutely not give you any discount. Let's just start with the one under my foot. As soon as he said that, Ma Duanxiang exerted a bit of force on his foot, and the crowd immediately heard the familiar, yet numbing sound of bones breaking. The hand that Xiao Honkai had been stepped on had already lost all its fingers. It was very likely that there wasn't even a single finger left. Feeling the inhuman pain that shot straight up to his head, Xiao Honkai's face instantly turned red, and the veins on his body bulged violently. However, he clenched his teeth tightly and didn't make a sound. His pair of bloodshot eyes stared fiercely at Ma Duanxiang as he spat out each word through gritted teeth. You will pay the price. You will definitely pay the price. If you don't kill me today, in the future, I will return it to you 1,000 times over. I'm so scared. Ma Duanxiang purposely pretended to be afraid, and then laughed out loud. Looks like I said something wrong just now. I shouldn't have said that you are boring. I should have said that you are very interesting. Today, I will not kill you. No matter how much you try to provoke me, it will be useless. But I will destroy your meridians one by one. I want to see how you bunch of useless people plan to seek revenge on me in the future. Ha! Right at that moment, Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, who were not far away, suddenly attacked at the same time. Their speed instantly increased to the maximum, and it was impossible to tell that they had been seriously injured by the earth spike earlier. Once a cultivator's meridians were destroyed, they would become completely useless. They would rather fight to the death than watch Xiao Honkai become a useless person, and they were even more unwilling to become a useless person themselves. Seeking death. Ma Duanxiang's eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he had said that he didn't want to kill anyone, but if these lowly ants were bent on seeking death, then he would not be merciful. It was just killing a few insignificant outer court disciples, and in his eyes, it was not even worth a fart. That earth spike just now was just a show of strength. Once he really wanted to kill, not a single person here would be able to escape. And now, he was planning to start a massacre. With a single thought, Ma Duanxiang was about to unleash his killing technique. Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming's speed was already extremely fast in the eyes of a normal person. But in the eyes of an original infant stage expert like him, they were as slow as a turtle crawling, weak to the point of being unable to withstand a single blow. With the sudden appearance of killing intent, Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming's hearts were filled with alarm. However, the two of them did not stop their movements and continued to advance forward. How could a person not be stabbed in the Jianghe? Even if they were to die, what was there to fear? Lu Bianren, senior brother Ku Bai, and Xiao Hongsai's eyes were bloodshot when they saw this scene. Seeing that the two of them were about to be the first to die, a cool breeze suddenly swept across the field, and without any warning, a figure suddenly appeared. He said indifferently, "Killing is but a small matter. You have no enmity with them. Why do you want to cause trouble for yourself, junior brother Ma?" Everyone was stunned. Even the unbridled Ma Duanxiang couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw this person's appearance. This person was the eldest senior brother who managed the inner court of Blue Cloud Pavilion, Jia Mufan. With Ma Duanxiang's original infant stage strength, he could treat anyone here as if they were grass. He could kill or cripple them as he pleased, but when facing this Jia Mufan, even he had to restrain himself. Not only was this because Jia Mufan was the eldest senior brother who managed the inner court, but also because Jia Mufan also had the strength of her original infant stage and was even stronger than him. Senior brother Jia, these people gathered in my courtyard without permission. I don't know what they are plotting. Shouldn't you punish them? Ma Duanxiang was stunned for a moment, then returned to normal and looked at Lu Bianren and the others with a cold smile. Chapter 4575. Jia Mufan swept his gaze across the crowd and saw that no one was uninjured, especially senior brother Ku Bai and Xiao Honkai. He furrowed his brows and said, "Apart from a duel, it's strictly forbidden for fellow disciples to kill each other. This is the iron rule of the 3 great pavilions, and no one can defy it. Junior brother Ma, although you haven't been in the sect for long, I hope you'll keep this in mind. Otherwise, it won't be a good thing for you or the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion. Moreover, they've already paid the price. Going too far is as bad as falling short. I advise you to stop, junior brother Ma." "Fine. Very well. Since senior brother Jia has spoken, I will give you face and let these reckless ants go for now. However, if they fall into my hands again next time, don't blame me for not showing any mercy," said Jia Xiu coldly. Ma Daoxiang stared deeply at Jia Mufan, then slowly removed his foot from Xiao Hongsai's hand with a sinister smile. "All right, remember to arrange a duel in advance next time." Gasp! Everyone looked at Xiao Hongsai's hand, which had been trampled beyond recognition, and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Even though they had seen many battles, they had never known that a hand could be trampled into such a bloody mess. At this moment, They couldn't even see the outline of a hand. Xiao Honkai hadn't made a single sound from beginning to end. This fellow was truly unimaginably unyielding. Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, who were the closest to him, exchanged glances. While guarding against Ma Daoqiang's every move, they hurriedly rescued Xiao Honkai from the human-shaped pit. Then, they slowly retreated to Lu Bianren and senior brother Ku Bai's side. They were bound by a common enemy. The few of you should leave. From today onwards, this place belongs to junior brother Ma. Don't come here again, lest you bring trouble upon yourself, Zheng Mufan said slowly to the crowd. What? This is junior brother Lin's residence? How can he give it to someone else? Lu Bianren and the rest were shocked. They thought Ma Daoqiang was just looking for trouble. They didn't expect it to be true. Junior brother Lin? You mean that bullshit Linny? Ha ha ha. After disappearing for more than a year, I don't even know if he's dead or alive. How could he have the cheek to occupy the toilet without taking a shit? This is the best residence in the inner sect of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Since I've seen it, it's mine. Could it be that you still dare to have any objections? Ma Daoqiang laughed complacently. Seeing that Lu Bianren and the others were boiling with rage, Zhang Mufan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He signaled with his eyes to stop them and said, There's an inside story to this matter. I'll explain it clearly to you. You better follow me out first. Zhang Mufan walked up to Lu Bianren's group and nodded slightly at Lu Bianren. Then, he took the lead and walked out the door. Everyone's gazes landed on Lu Bianren. Now that Lin Yi wasn't here, Lu Bianren was the leader of the group. He could leave or stay as he pleased. If the leader had been Xiao Honkai, he would definitely have fought to the death today. He would not have hesitated even if he had to die here. However, Lu Bianren was different. He was not so hot-tempered. He was more considerate of the bigger picture. Where there's life, there's hope. It wasn't wise to stay here knowing that they couldn't win. Moreover, if they did that, even Zhang Mufan, the eldest senior brother who came to mediate the situation, would be offended. If he offended them, the consequences would be unimaginable. All right, let's go. Lu Bianren took a deep breath and took the lead to follow Zhang Mufan. Although the others were unwilling, they knew that this was the best choice. They glared at Ma Daoqiang before leaving. Huh, what a bunch of cowards. Ma Daoqiang laughed smugly at the back. All right, I forgot to tell you that I'm about to become the second senior brother of Blue Cloud Pavilion's intersect manager. Although I don't take in useless people, I'll leave a few positions for you since you're the former newcomer king's underlings. If you know what's good for you, come and join me. Otherwise, you won't be so lucky next time. Lu Bianren and the others looked at each other. They couldn't be bothered to argue with this bastard. They sneered in their hearts. Next time? Humph. The next time will be the time for you to pay with your blood. The group walked out of the main door with a heavy atmosphere. Lu Bianren suddenly stopped and said to Zhang Mufan, Senior brother Jia, can you tell us what's going on now? How did junior brother Lin's residence become that bastard's? Zhang Mufan stopped and glanced at everyone's faces. He sighed and said, Actually, junior brother Ma had already taken a liking to this place on the second day after the inter-disciple competition ended. He came to me to ask for it, but I rejected him on the spot because it's junior brother Lin's place. What happened after that? Lu Bianren and the others frowned. Since then, he came to me a few more times. But I made excuses every time. I might as well tell you the truth. Although I'm not very familiar with junior brother Lin, and we can't be considered friends, he's someone who's valued by both Pavilion Master Shangwan and Pavilion Master Yu. As the eldest senior brother who manages the inner sect, why would I offend junior brother Lin for this kind of thing? Zhang Mufan said sincerely. Everyone nodded successively, and the gazes they shot at Zhang Mufan had obviously become much friendlier. They were able to discern that he was speaking the truth. Moreover, with his identity as the eldest senior brother that managed the inner court, it was extremely difficult for him to be willing to speak such heartfelt words to them. Needless to say, this fellow really had a way of handling matters. If that's the case, how did it still fall into his hands? Lu Bianren and the others looked at each other. Zhang Mufan was the one who had the power to allocate the cave residences for the inner sect disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion. If he rejected it, Would Ma Jinyang dare to snatch it from him without a valid reason? You might not know this, but Junior Brother Ma's position in the inner sect of Blue Cloud Pavilion is no longer lower than mine. Many of the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion think highly of him. He's determined to win this time. He found a few pavilion elders to support him and forcefully put the residents under his name in the Elders' Council of Blue Cloud Pavilion. Therefore, there's nothing I can do. Jiang Mufan shrugged helplessly. Damn it, this is too much. Everyone was filled with righteous indignation. If Lin Yi was still here, they believed that even the elders of Blue Cloud Pavilion would not dare to do such a thing. After all, offending Lin Yi was equivalent to slapping Shanghai Tianhua in the face. Even Yu Jinyang, the pavilion master of Blue Cloud Pavilion, would not dare to do such a thing, let alone the elders. Chapter 4576. Not to mention, without Lin Yi's permission, even if Shangguan Tianhua knew about it, he wouldn't be able to interfere. After all, this was Clear Cloud Pavilion's internal affairs. Although this powerful Soaring Sky Pavilion Lord didn't really care about public opinion, he rarely broke the rules, and he wouldn't interfere with other pavilions' trivial matters. This is the decision of the internal elders of Blue Cloud Pavilion. I can only act according to the rules. I originally planned to delay the delivery to 3 days later, which is just the right time to communicate with a few of you. However, I did not expect to receive a message from Junior Brother Ma right after I received the order from the higher-ups, saying that he was already here to receive it. That's why I rushed over. I did not expect to see you guys like this. Sigh. Jiang Mufan let out a long sigh and patted Lu Bianren's shoulder. He said to the crowd with a face full of shame, "It was my thoughtlessness that caused you guys to suffer. Senior Brother Jia, you don't have to blame yourself. What happened today is between us and Ma Daoqiang. It has nothing to do with you. We will remember your kindness," Lu Bianren said immediately. The others nodded in unison. What happened today had already caused them to fight to the death with Ma Daoqiang. There was no possibility of reconciliation from now on. No matter what, it's because I came late that caused you guys to suffer. It just so happens that I have a good relationship with the person in charge of medicine in the pill hall. I will bring you guys to treat your injuries. I guarantee that there will not be any sequelae. Jiang Mufan took the initiative to say. Lu Bianren looked at Xiao Honkai and Senior Brother Kubai. His injuries were still manageable. As long as they applied some good medicine, they would recover quickly without going to the pill hall. However, these two were different. Xiao Hongsai's hand was already beyond recognition, and Senior Brother Kubai's right leg was almost broken. If they did not receive treatment as soon as possible, there'll be big problems. In that case, thank you for your kindness, Senior Brother Jia. Lu Bianren did not decline. Treating his injuries was the most important thing now. Owing a favor for this was not a big deal. He just had to find an opportunity to return it in the future. Don't mention it. This is my duty as a senior brother. There's no need to thank me. Jiang Mufan waved his hand. He immediately led everyone to the medical hall. As he walked, he asked, "Oh right, is there still no news from Junior Brother Lin?" "Not yet. Ever since I parted ways with him in the South Continent Sea, I haven't heard from him again." Lu Bianren and the others said gloomily. If Lin Yi was here, how could he allow a clown like this to act as a spear? Even at the very least, he would be able to ensure everyone's safety, and they wouldn't end up in such a miserable state. Don't worry, Junior Brother Lin. You must have faith in Junior Brother Lin. He'll come back safely. Jiang Mufan smiled as he consoled her. That's right, Junior Brother Lin will definitely be safe, definitely. Lu Bianren nodded heavily. Hearing the two of them say so, the others finally felt a little better. Pausing, Lu Bianren suddenly thought of something and asked Jiang Mufan, Senior Brother Jia, Junior Brother Lin, and Junior Sister Huang received a mission to capture the evil cultivator, Wu Baoliang. News of Wu Baoliang being killed on the spot has already spread, so please take some time to cancel their mission. Yes, this is my duty. Don't worry. Jiang Mufan agreed readily without hesitation. Thank you, Senior Brother Jia. Lu Bianren and the others nodded gratefully. They thought to themselves, Thank goodness this intersect steward is easy to talk to. Otherwise, not only would they not be able to pass today, they might even have to go through a lot of trouble to cancel the mission. If this kind of mission was left hanging and not canceled, it would greatly affect the future missions and a series of other matters. It might even affect Lin Yi's long-term development in Blue Cloud Pavilion. After all, strictly speaking, this was a stain that was neither too big nor too small. He brought Liu Bianren and the others to the Pill Hall. With Jia Mufan's identity, he naturally received special treatment. After all, he was the Clear Cloud Pavilion's eldest senior brother who was in charge of the inner sanctum. He was destined to have a bright future ahead of him. Even though he came from the Clear Cloud Pavilion, no one dared to slight him. The Dan Hall immediately sent out the best doctors to treat everyone's injuries. As everyone only had some superficial injuries, apart from Xiao Honkai and senior brother Ku Bai, who were more troublesome and needed to stay for treatment, Liu Bianren and the others could quickly return to their respective homes. However, Jia Mufan stayed with them from morning till night. It was rare for someone of his status to have such patience. If it was Lin Yi, it would not be strange for Jia Mufan to do this. However, the status of Liu Bianren and the others was worlds apart from him. Jia Mufan was still able to do this. It was evident that this person was not simple. Even if his nascent soul stage strength was disregarded, his temperament alone was destined to be extraordinary. He would definitely achieve great things in the future. Thank you, Senior Brother Jia, for today's matter. We will engrave it in our hearts and never dare to forget it. Liu Bianren brought Xiao Ran and Li Zhengming with him, and the three of them bowed deeply to Jia Mufan. You're too polite. It's nothing. It's not worth mentioning. Jia Mufan smiled. Before he left, he said, "There's one thing I hope you'll bear in mind. Don't make unnecessary sacrifices. Before Junior Brother Lin returns, don't provoke Junior Brother Ma. With his current status, if he really wants to kill you, to be honest, it would be in vain. That's all I have to say. Take care." The three of them looked at Jia Mufan's receding figure in silence. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ran suddenly asked, "Senior Brother Liu, do you think there's a deeper meaning behind Senior Brother Jia helping us so much? I also think it's a little strange. Although Senior Brother Jia has always been smooth and slick, he's still the eldest senior brother in charge of the intersect. It's fine that he helped us out just now, but he actually personally sent us to the Pill Hall to treat our injuries. To be honest, even I didn't expect this." Liu Bianren shook his head in confusion. Every action of a big shot must have a deeper meaning, and Jia Mufan was undoubtedly a big shot. There must be a reason for his actions. It's just that everyone couldn't see through it for the time being. In my opinion, Senior Brother Jia has a big plan. He's really someone with a long-term vision. Today, I've learned something new, Li Zhengming said thoughtfully. "Oh, why do you say that? Zhengming, tell us quickly." Liu Bianren and Xiao Ran were stunned and asked hurriedly. From today's incident, although Senior Brother Jia is smooth and slick and doesn't seem to have offended Ma Daoqiang, I'm afraid he's already made a decision based on how he protected us and especially personally sent us to the Pill Hall, Li Zhengming said slowly. "Choice? You mean?" Liu Bianren and Xiao Ran fell into deep thought at the same time. Chapter 4577. They're both geniuses who can impress the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion. When they grow up, they'll definitely influence the overall situation. However, it's precisely because the two of them are so similar that it can't be two tigers on the same mountain. Ma Mufan deliberately causing trouble for us today is proof of that. So, when Boss Lin Yi returns, everyone, including Jia Mufan, will have to make a decision in time to support Ma Mufan or Boss Lin Yi. Li Zhengming became more and more certain as he spoke. In other words, Jia Mufan has already decided to support Boss Lin Yi. Xiao Ran's heart skipped a beat. This was a rare piece of good news. After all, Jia Mufan was a truly important figure in Blue Cloud Pavilion. His status was even higher than some of the elders of Blue Cloud Pavilion. "Looks like it." Liu Bianren nodded, but then he asked doubtfully, "But why would he make such a choice? If he waited for Junior Brother Lin to return, it wouldn't be strange for him to make such a choice. But now that junior brother Lin's life is uncertain, isn't he afraid of angering that arrogant and despotic Mahjua? I think he's betting on something other than Boss Lin E, but someone else, Li Zhengming said in a low voice. Who is that? Lu Bianren and Xiao Ran asked at the same time. The Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shangwan Tianhua. Li Zhengming's answer was shocking. However, when they thought about it carefully, they found that it made sense. Everyone in the three great pavilions knew that Lin he had a close relationship with Shanghai Laner. What's more, he was a genius that Shanghai Tianhua had personally appointed. So basically, everyone automatically added the two words Shangwan to Lin Yi's name. This could also be understood as offending Lin. It was offending Shanghai Tianhua. And expressing goodwill to Lin, he was expressing goodwill to Shanghai Tianhua. According to your analysis, Zheng Ming, senior brother Jia, really has a big plan. But then again, senior brother Jia, if even someone like him can't sit in that position, then I'm afraid no one in the world can. Lu Bianren sighed with emotion. Xiaoran nodded. Although he didn't say it out loud, they already knew what Jiang Mufan wanted to do. Under normal circumstances, a senior disciple who was in charge of the inner sanctum of the Blue Cloud Pavilion would not have any interaction with Shanghai Tianhua, the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. However, there was one exception, and that was when he had set his sights on the position of the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. According to the rules passed down from their ancestors, anyone who wanted to be the cabinet master of any of the three pavilions must pass the decision of the North Island elders, especially the support of the cabinet masters of the other two pavilions. Not a single one could be omitted. Based on Jia Mufan's current strength and status, although he was still far from the position of Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord, based on his experience, when his strength reached a certain level, it wasn't impossible for him to fight for the position. Jia Mufan was planning for a rainy day. Lu Bianren, Xiao Ran, and Li Zhengming left after a long discussion. With their current strength and level, they were still far away from Jia Mufan, let alone the position of the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. No matter what, Jia Mufan's choice was a good thing for them. After all, it was equivalent to having a strong ally. What they needed to do next was to recuperate and cultivate well, waiting for Lin E to come back. An eye for an eye. 5 Poison Swamp, South Island. Stepping on the broad back of the 5 Evils dragon, Lin E had been cultivating surrounded by the murderous aura of the 5 elements for more than 3 months, just like before. Recently, Lin E gradually found that the effect of the murderous aura of the 5 elements on his cultivation was constantly weakening. At least, it was not as fast as it was at the beginning. At the same time, the result of the 3 months cultivation was Lin Yi's strength had successfully broken through from the early stage of the nascent soul realm to the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. He only leveled up 1 level in 3 months. This progress was obviously much slower than before, but it was still very gratifying. First, Lin Yi did not take any elixirs during the process. It was a pure breakthrough, which was commendable. Second, the higher the level, the more difficult it was to make a breakthrough. Naturally, it would take a longer time. This was an eternal truth. For ordinary people, it would take dozens of years for a golden core stage expert to level up. Once they reached the original infant stage, this time span would be more than 100 years. It was normal for most original infant stage experts not to level up for hundreds of years. In comparison, Lin Yi was able to level up 1 level in just 3 months. This in itself was already very impressive. Lin Yi was not a greedy person, but this was a rare opportunity. Merely reaching the peak of the early nascent soul stage was not enough to satisfy him. He had to continue cultivating and continue to break through. However, if he wanted to level up, the murderous aura of the 5 elements in this place was not enough. Lin immediately said to the 5 Evils dragon, "Go up a little more. I need stronger, murderous aura of the 5 elements." "I'm afraid that's not possible," the 5 Evils dragon said. "Why? Could it be that even you can't withstand the murderous aura of the 5 elements?" Lin, he was stunned. However, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that this was not possible. Previously, the five evils dragon was swimming freely in the swamp. Even though the murderous aura was densely packed in the middle layer, the murderous aura of the five elements was not a threat to it at all. Instead, the murderous aura of the five elements scared it away. Of course I can. However, even if I go up, it will be of no use to you. The five evils dragon shook its head and said, "What do you mean?" Lin, he was confused. Right now, he needed even stronger, murderous aura of the five elements to aid in his cultivation. This didn't even require him to go up to the middle layer. All he had to do was fly up a little bit. How could it be of no use to him? Roar, roar. Even if I explain it to you like this, you won't understand. You'll understand when you go up. As soon as the five evils dragon finished speaking, it flapped its wings and flew up a little bit. Then it stopped. Although it hadn't reached the middle layer, the murderous aura of the five elements around it was much stronger and more numerous than before. Lin, he was quite satisfied. However, just as he was about to start cultivating, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. He couldn't help but cry out in surprise. How could this be? Before this, all the murderous auras of the five elements that Lin, he had encountered, regardless of whether they were strong or weak, were single-minded. Basically, as long as they sensed Lin Yi's aura, and as long as Lin Yi didn't use his primary energy to cover his body, they would immediately attack. Unless Lin Yi escaped, or the murderous aura of the five elements gradually dissipated in the process, they would definitely not stop until one of them died. Chapter 4578. However, when the dragon of five evils brought him up, they all fled in all directions. Even the five elements killing aura in the distance automatically avoided them and did not attack him. Cent Pound, the five elements killing aura, is also intelligent. Although they are not afraid of you, they are afraid of me. So they automatically escaped. The dragon of five evils laughed. But before they attacked me, Lenny could not help but feel strange. That's because they're too weak, so they don't have enough intelligence. Basically, they're like brainless fools. However, this five elements killing aura is different. The stronger the pressure, the stronger their intelligence, and the more they know what's good for them. After sensing my presence, they naturally avoided me. As for me, I couldn't completely hide my presence here, so I avoided you as well. The five elements killing aura explained. So you're saying that the weaker five element auras were too weak? They didn't dare to attack you, but they dared to attack me? Lenny said, understanding what was going on. Yes, that's what I mean. The dragon of five evils nodded. This is really... Lin, he was speechless. The five elements killing aura was not a living thing, but it had a certain degree of intelligence. Previously, he thought it was very strange and eye-opening. But now, he could only smile bitterly. The five elements killing aura did not need to reproduce. Why did they need such a strong intelligence? With the help of the dragon of five evils, Lin, he thought he could completely use the five elements killing aura. He thought he could simply cultivate in seclusion here for a few years. If he took a few gathering nascent golden pills, he might be able to reach the peak of the nascent soul realm. Now, everything was just like the moon in the mirror. It didn't matter how strong the five elements were here, or how strong the pressure was. It was useless to him if they didn't attack him at all. If only he could fly, he wouldn't need the dragon to carry him. Unfortunately, this was purely an extravagant hope. What now? Do we still go to that place to cultivate? The dragon of five evils asked. Forget it. Let's go down first. Lenny sighed. Although the effect of cultivation in that place was better than usual, it was not as obvious as before. This feeling was like a person who was used to riding in a rocket had suddenly become an airship. He could not help but feel dull and somewhat disappointed. All right then. The dragon of five evils nodded and lowered its body to the ground. It had been cultivating with Lin Yi for 3 whole months, and even it was beginning to feel bored. He returned to the ground. Lin Yi's face was gloomy as he sighed helplessly. I can't get out. I can't cultivate. and there's nothing to do in this place. It's really a pain in the ass. He could clearly see the incomparably powerful 5 elemental killing chi when he raised his head, but because he couldn't fly, he couldn't use it to cultivate. This feeling of guarding a treasure mountain without being able to do anything really made him speechless. Before he encountered the 5 diabolical dragons, even if he couldn't cultivate, he could at least explore this place. However, now that he knew that this was the nest of the 5 poison dragon and the dragon of 5 evils, there was naturally no need to explore this place anymore. Not to mention the fact that he couldn't find anything good. Even if he was lucky enough to come across something, he would not be able to just take it for himself. After all, in theory, the owner of this place was the dragon of 5 evils. Everything in this underground space belonged to it. If it was another spirit beast, he naturally wouldn't feel any guilt snatching it. However, he was an old friend of the dragon of 5 evils. He never had the habit of snatching treasures from his friends. Moreover, the dragon of 5 evils had specially accompanied him to cultivate for so long. If he still wanted to take something from it, he would be too inhumane. Therefore, to avoid embarrassment, he simply gave up on the idea of exploring around. Being trapped here without being able to do anything felt like being imprisoned. No matter who it was, they would feel frustrated and depressed. Even someone as calm as he was no exception. At this moment, the dragon of 5 evils suddenly said, "Actually, that might not be the case. Could it be that you have a way to prevent the 5 elemental killing aura from escaping?" Lin Yi's spirit was instantly lifted. If he could continue to cultivate smoothly based on his previous progress, it wouldn't be long before he could reach the middle stage of the original infant stage. If his strength really reached that stage, he would have enough confidence to face the West Mountain Elder. Although he wouldn't be able to face the Elder directly, at least he would have the ability to protect himself. He wouldn't be in such a precarious situation like before. Especially with the help of the ghostly thing, he was confident that he would be able to escape. Perhaps even more. I didn't think about that. The 5 elemental killing aura is actually more sensitive than any human cultivator or spirit beast. If I completely conceal my presence, I might have a chance to deceive them. However, once I move, there's definitely no chance. The dragon of 5 evils shook its head. What do you mean by not necessarily? He grinned in disappointment. I'm not necessarily talking about cultivation. I'm talking about whether or not you can get out. The dragon of 5 evils looked at Lin Yi's depressed expression and smiled. Get out? How? Lin Yi's eyes lit up and he asked hurriedly. Anyway, continuing to cultivate here wouldn't have much effect. At this time, if there was a way to get out, he wouldn't have any regrets. It had been almost a year and a half since he left the North Island. Such a long time had passed without him noticing. To be honest, he really missed his senior and junior brothers and was worried about whether they had encountered any trouble. Now you know that there are 2 entrances and exits in this place. You definitely don't have to try the one in the hinterland of the South Island. After all, you might have been blacklisted by the Spirit Beast clan. That place is too dangerous for you. However, I think you can try the one you came in before. After all, such a long time has passed. Maybe their spies have withdrawn. The dragon of 5 evils said after thinking for a while. All right, he suddenly patted his head excitedly. He didn't think of this because he was closely involved in the situation. No matter how cautious and suspicious the Elder of West Mountain was, people always had limited patience. It was already ridiculous for the Elder of West Mountain to send people to guard the swamp of 5 poisons, a place of certain death, for him to fall into such a place as the swamp of 5 poisons. Now that more than half a year had passed, they should have given up long ago. After all, they didn't know that there was such a treasure land below, let alone that he could avoid the attack of the 5 elemental killing aura. Chapter 4579. Is there any other way? Is there a 3rd entrance and exit? Then why don't you tell me directly? He hurriedly asked. To tell you the truth, there really is a 3rd entrance and exit in this place, but I have never been to this entrance and exit. It's just that my master, the Five Poisons Flood Dragon, mentioned it before his death. It doesn't seem to have been there, and there is no exact information related to it. So, I don't know what the situation outside this entrance and how dangerous it is. Unless you have to, I don't recommend you to take this risk. The Dragon of Five Evils shook its head. I see. That's equivalent to a complete gamble. It's really too risky. Lenny pondered for a moment and nodded. After all, this place was located under the South Island. So according to common sense, the third entrance and exit, like the other two, was very likely to be in the South Island or even in the hinterland of another South Island. If Lin Yi went out rashly, he would be walking into a trap, and the risk he had to take was not small at all. So I didn't tell you before, lest you go to die. How about it? I'm very kind, right? Roar. The Dragon of Five Evils laughed. Very kind. Then I'll go to the Five Poisons Swamp to have a look first. If there are still people guarding it, then even if it's risky, I can only give it a try. After Lenny said that, he immediately jumped on the back of the spirit bird. One man and one bird instantly soared into the sky, and almost in the blink of an eye, they came to the surface of the Five Poisons Swamp. Lin Yi's heart sank as he scanned the area with the goddamn thing's consciousness. This West Mountain elder still hadn't removed his eyes? This was far beyond stubbornness. He was sick in the head. He was about to go crazy at this moment, and he was full of dirty words. But in fact, he really blamed the West Mountain elder wrongly this time. As he had speculated before, even if the West Mountain elder was cautious and suspicious, he had already determined that he would die after such a long time. The reason why he didn't remove the spies was actually very simple. He had forgotten he was already dead. This was what the West Mountain elder was thinking. As an evil cultivator, he naturally wouldn't care about a dead person. Thus, he naturally threw Lin Yi to the back of his mind. He even completely forgot about the spies that Long Kiba had planted in the Five Poison Swamp. If the dignified West Mountain elder cared about these dragon boat escorts who couldn't even be considered as minions, then the sun would rise from the west. Since West Mountain's elder sect master didn't say anything, Long Kiba naturally didn't dare to withdraw his people. To him, it was just a matter of losing 2 escorts. It didn't matter at all. It was even more impossible for him to bother the West Mountain elder over such a small matter. To Long Kiba, as long as he didn't urge him to find some nascent soul female cultivator, everything would be fine. So what if he sent out a few escorts? As a result, the escorts under him became the unlucky ones. Even though they knew it was pointless, they could only come here on time and did not dare to slack off. The minions, were just unlucky. As for Lin Yi, the person involved, he was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. From the complaints of the 2 people above him, he already knew the cause and effect. He almost vomited blood on the spot. They were obviously negligent. In the end, he couldn't move because of a freak combination of factors. How could he explain this? He forcibly restrained himself for a long time. Finally, he barely restrained the idea of killing the 2 spies. Don't look at the perfunctory attitude of these 2 people. But once they felt danger, they would immediately crush the sensing jade tablet. At that time, even if the West Mountain elder had already forgotten about him, he would definitely remember this matter when he saw the jade tablet shatter. With Lin Yi's current strength at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, facing the West Mountain elder, he didn't have much confidence in escaping unscathed. Even if he escaped back to the Five Poison Swamp and left the West Mountain elder helpless, this would expose the key information that he could survive in the Five Poison Swamp. When the time came, the West Mountain elder would definitely not rest until he was dead. It would be even more impossible for him to escape from here. This was a risk that Lin Yi couldn't take. So after weighing the pros and cons, he could only resentfully ride the spirit bird back down to the underground space. It seems that we can't get out from here. How about it? Do you want to try the third passage? Seeing Lin Yi's unlucky expression from afar, the 5 Demons dragon didn't need to ask to know the result. Of course, otherwise we will be trapped here alive. I really have to give it to that old monster. Even an unintentional mistake can force me to be unable to move. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. If the West Mountain Elder hadn't forgotten about him at this time, then it might be possible to remove the spy after a period of time. But now that he had forgotten about it, he wouldn't take the initiative to think about it in the future. Long Kiba and the others wouldn't dare to bother him with such a trivial matter. It was very likely that even after 8 to 10 years, he would still be like this. There was no hope at all. The Five Demons Dragon was stunned for a moment. After listening to Lin Yi's explanation, it suddenly laughed forward and back. It lay on the ground and madly slapped the ground with its claws. For a time, the earth shook. I say, can you at least restrain yourself a little? You don't have to show your schadenfreude so vividly, right? You're about to cause an earthquake. Lin, he squinted his eyes and said speechlessly, if an earth-opening stage existence really let loose and destroyed, the entire space would probably collapse. Just the Five Demons Dragon smile alone caused cracks to appear. It really couldn't withstand its torment. Roar, 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 roar. This is the funniest joke I've heard in 2 years. You're really unlucky. It's too funny. The Five Demons Dragon was still laughing unscrupulously. It was obviously a dinosaur, but Lin, he stared blankly at it laughing until tears came out of its eyes. In the past 2 years, you've only seen me, a human. You haven't even met a ghost. It would be strange if you could hear a joke. Lin, he speechlessly cursed for a while. He waited for the Five Demons Dragon to stop laughing, then urged it to lead the way to the third entrance. Although this space was vast and boundless, with the speed of the Five Fiends Dragon, it could cover any distance in an instant. Although the Spirit Bird speed was not as terrifying as the Five Fiends Dragons, a nascent Soul Spirit Bird speed in the outside world was enough to make one's hair stand on end. After flying for a while, the Five Demons Dragon suddenly landed in front of them. Lin, he thought that they had reached their destination, so he hurriedly let the Spirit Bird land. However, he discovered that everything around him was the same as before. It didn't seem like there was an entrance at all. Chapter 4580. Could this be? Lin, he looked at the Dragon of Five Evils. According to the Dragon of Five Evils, its master, the Five-Poison Flood Dragon, was the only other person in this space. However, he was already dead. That's right, this is my master's grave. The Dragon of Five Evils nodded. It had been laughing uncontrollably at Lin Yi's embarrassing encounter, but now it seemed to be deeply sad. This answer was within Lin Yi's expectations. Now that he had confirmed it, he couldn't help but feel deep respect for it. Although he had never interacted with the Five-Poison Flood Dragon, it was still a super spiritual beast that had once stood at the peak. This was a form of respect for a powerhouse, especially since it still had such a terrifying aura after its death. One could only imagine how powerful it was when it was alive. Lin, he sighed inwardly. If it wasn't for the Vermilion Bird, this Five-Poison serpent would have become the new Azure Dragon Elder. That was a supreme existence that stood at the top of Sky Class Island. But now, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Everything had turned to dust. Why don't you set up a dragon grave for it? It doesn't even have a proper tombstone. How can it rest in peace after its death? The ghostly thing suddenly emerged from Lin Yi's body and spoke to the Dragon of Five Evils sternly. The lingering aura of this place was the reason for the Five-Poison Flood Dragon's lingering obsession. In this case, even if the Five-Poison Flood Dragon was dead, it would never be able to escape. It could only sink in its endless obsession and resentment for all eternity. This was the most lamentable outcome for a member of the Dragon Clan. Senior Ghost, I also want to set up a dragon grave for my master. However, my master told me before he died that unless I set up a tombstone with the Vermilion Bird's bone, he wouldn't be able to die in peace. This was my master's last wish. I didn't dare to disobey it. The Dragon of Five Evils said with bloodshot eyes. The ghostly thing and Lin, he fell silent. They bowed deeply to the Five-Poison Flood Dragon at the same time. The ghostly thing then sighed and said, "Fine. Since your master had such a wish, you should work hard in this direction. Don't let it wait too long. That bastard, the Vermilion Bird, won't be able to be arrogant for long. I promise." "I know. One day, I will use the vermilion bird's corpse as a sacrifice to my master's spirit in heaven. The five evils dragon took a deep breath and said with determination. At this point, the vermilion bird was already an opponent that the five venoms dragon had to kill, whether it was for the five venoms dragon or for itself. However, this opponent was too strong and too scary. Even though the five evils dragon was at the earth opening stage, it could only hide here like a tortoise. Only when it was strong enough would the five evils dragon be born and make the vermilion bird pay the price of blood. He stood to the side and didn't say anything. He didn't have any grudges with the vermilion bird, but if he had enough strength, he would definitely make a move against the vermilion bird. After all, regardless of whether it was that ghostly being or the five malevolent dragons, they would not rest until the vermilion bird was dead. The group stayed at the five poison flood dragons graveyard for a while before taking off again. With the speed of the spirit bird, they flew at full speed for over an hour. After that, he finally caught up with the five evils dragon. This place was very far from the five poison swamp, but even so, he couldn't find the end of this mysterious space. The vastness of this mysterious space was really incredible. If I'm not wrong, this should be the third exit. Up there should be the third exit, said the five fiends dragon as it pointed above. He heard this and looked up. The scene was the same as before. It was still filled with the five elemental killing chi. He couldn't see anything different. However, this wasn't strange. Even at the original place, he couldn't see through the five elemental killing chi to see the five poison swamp. If he wanted to know what was above, he would have to go up there. Above, where is this? He couldn't help but ask. Finally, he found a possible exit. At this moment, he couldn't help but want to give it a try. I don't know. Master didn't let me go up. Even he himself hasn't been there before. The only reason he knew about this place was because of the message left behind by the previous generation's flood dragon. No matter what, one thing is for sure. So, whether or not you want to leave this place, you really have to think carefully. The five evils dragon spoke in a serious tone. There was definitely danger. Otherwise, the five poison flood dragon wouldn't have warned the five evils. With their strength, they had to be so careful. If he was only at the peak of the early stage of the original soul stage, then the danger would be unimaginable. The West Mountain sect was very dangerous, and so was the Spirit Beast clan. However, the unknown place above might be even more dangerous than the previous two combined. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to cry even if he wanted to. He gritted his teeth and turned his head to look at the ghostly thing floating beside him. He wasn't willing to give up just like this. He knew that this place was dangerous, but compared to the other two exits, there was at least a chance of survival. After all, if he went through the other two exits, there was a 99% chance that he would either die on the spot or be forced back. The one in front of him was more or less enough for him to imagine. According to the distance and direction I flew from just now, I can roughly judge the situation above. No wonder the five poison flood dragon didn't let the five evils boy go up from here. If it was me, I would do the same. The ghostly thing's tone was a bit complicated. Although the five evils dragon was the owner of this space in name, it didn't know the situation above at all. On the contrary, the ghostly thing knew it like the back of its hand. After all, the South Continent used to be its base camp. The entire map of the South Continent was in its head. As long as it knew the direction, it would naturally be able to find the corresponding position on the map. Hearing the ghostly thing's tone, Lenny couldn't help but feel nervous. He hurriedly asked, "Above is endless sea." The ghostly thing slowly spat out these four words. "See?" He was stunned when he heard it. He thought it was somewhere like the core hinterland of the South Island. He even thought it might be the territory of a super spirit beast, like the vermilion bird. He didn't expect such an answer. Even the five evils dragon next to him was a bit stunned. Since it was teleported here, it had never taken a step out. The five poison flood dragon didn't tell it much about these things, so it could be said that it knew nothing about the sea on the Heaven Stage Island. I can't be wrong. According to the location, it's definitely not land above. It's the endless sea above, and it's some distance from the South Island. The ghostly thing said with certainty. Chapter 4581. Stupid, have you forgotten the sea beasts in the sea? They are existences that even our spirit beasts dare not provoke. The ghost smiled bitterly. Then what should I do? Only then did Lin Yi realize that the sea beasts and the spirit beasts were very different, and most of the sea beasts would stay away from the South Island. He subconsciously threw this dangerous factor to the back of his mind and broke out in a cold sweat. When he was chased by the West Mountain Old Sec for the first time, Lin Yi had encountered an extremely terrifying sea beast like the Ghost Ray. It was very close to the island, and its strength was already frightening. Now that he was far away from the South Island, once he encountered a sea beast, its strength would be much stronger. If he was unlucky, he would really die. The sea beasts are indeed terrifying, but it depends purely on luck. As long as your luck is a little bit better, you will always have a little hope of leaving alive. If it is the other two exits, to be honest, there is no hope at all. Whether you want to take the risk or not, it depends on you, kid. The ghost pondered for a moment and said, Senior, you are right. In this case, let's go up from here. A living person can't be suffocated to death. Lin Yi gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Wealth came from danger. Many times, people were forced to do nothing and could only bite the bullet and fight for their lives. In fact, to be honest, although the endless sea was full of danger, Lin Yi did not intend to explore the sea after all. As long as he went out, he would immediately let the spirit bird rush out of the sea at the fastest speed. The process would be extremely short, and the possibility of encountering a super strong sea beast was not very high. Once he successfully rushed out of the sea, he would be free to fly in the sky. For Lin Yi's decision, the ghost was not surprised at all. Do you really want to go from here? Then be careful. It sounded a little dangerous. The dragon of 5 evils reminded him. Although it had never encountered sea beasts, even the ghost, the former azure dragon, was so serious. That meant that it was indeed not simple. Maybe with its current strength of Earth Opening Realm, it would be in danger, let alone Lin Yi, who was only at the peak of Nascent Soul Realm. Lin Yi nodded and said, Don't worry. Thank you for your help during this period of time. I'll say goodbye to you now. See you later. I believe I'll come to the South Island to find you soon. After all, there was a ghostly thing here. When he had enough strength in the future, he would definitely accompany the ghostly thing to set foot on the South Island again. When that time came, the vermilion bird wouldn't be far away from its demise. All right, I'll wait for you here. Take care. The 5 evils dragon nodded heavily. After spending more than 3 months together, it had already regarded Lin Yi as a true old friend, not to mention that the ghost was also a senior dragon that it respected. If it wasn't for the fact that it couldn't disobey its master's order, it even had the intention to go out with Lin Yi. It was a pity that the dragon of 5 evils was carrying a blood feud. Before its death, the 5 poisons flood dragon had specially told it to stay here and endure hardships. Before it was strong enough to fight against the vermilion bird, it must not leave this underground space at all, lest it would be killed. After saying goodbye to the dragon of 5 evils, Lin Yi took a deep breath. Then he jumped on the back of the spirit bird, wrapped himself and the spirit bird with genuine chi, and suddenly soared into the sky. His figure quickly disappeared in the murderous aura of the 5 elements above. In the beginning, it was the same as what he had seen before. The murderous aura of the 5 elements was everywhere. It went from weak to strong, and after passing the middle level, it gradually became weaker. Not only did the pressure obviously become weaker, not only was the pressure obviously weaker, but the number was also decreasing rapidly. After rising for about half an hour, Lin Yi found that the murderous aura of the 5 elements around him had completely disappeared. At this moment, what appeared above his head was a cave entrance. Lin Yi had thought that this exit would be as vast as the 5 poison swamp, but he didn't expect that this cave entrance would be much smaller than he had expected. It was only a few feet in radius. He and the spirit bird could go in and out freely. If it were the size of the dragon of 5 evils, it would be a little difficult. If it were a bigger existence, it would be impossible to go in and out of here, unless the cave entrance was destroyed or a human figure was transformed. Looking into the cave entrance, it was pitch black inside, and the naked eye couldn't see the situation inside at all. He could only vaguely hear the rumbling sound of water, which must be very rapid. There's a whirlpool passage above, but as for what's on the other side of the passage, it depends on luck, the ghost said after sensing it with his divine awareness. It won't be like the whirlpool passage I saw before, which leads directly to the hinterland of the South Island. Will it? He suddenly had a bad feeling. He had been mentally prepared to face the endless sea, but if it led him to the hinterland of the South Island, it would be really funny. It's hard to say. Although I've specially studied these whirlpool passages near the South Island, it's only a small part of them. I've never even heard of a whirlpool passage in such a place before. Who knows where it leads to? It's all about luck. To be honest, it's not too late for you to regret now. The ghost tone was a little cautious, which was rare. There's no turning back. Since I've come here, how can I go back? Even if there's a mountain of knives and a sea of fire in front of me, I have to brace myself and have a try. If I don't even have the courage, I won't be able to get out of here for the rest of my life. Lin Yi's determination was far greater than the ghost's expectation. Instead of being timid, he would rather go all the way. After saying that, Lin Yi did not hesitate for too long. After adjusting his state a little, he immediately ordered the spirit bird to dive into the whirlpool passage. The water in this whirlpool passage was extremely strong. If Lin Yi hadn't protected his body with true qi, the water might have torn him and the spirit bird into pieces. If Lin Yi's strength was still at the middle stage of Gold Core, he might not be able to bear it, but now he was at the peak of the early stage of Yuanying realm. The stronger the current, the faster the speed. After half an instance's time, Lin Yi and the spirit bird suddenly felt the air beneath them, and both of them were flung out. They struggled for a long time before they finally managed to stabilize themselves. It was so dark that they couldn't see their fingers, but Lin Yi was relieved when he saw this. From the strong water pressure in all directions, he could feel that they were in the depths of the sea. Although it was also dangerous, it was much better than being taken to the hinterland of the South Island. As long as they could get to the surface, everything would be fine and they wouldn't have to worry about anything. Chapter 4582. However, Lin Yi had his true qi to protect his body, so the seawater could not get close to him at all. Moreover, whether it was him or the spirit bird, although they could not breathe freely in the water like the sea beasts, they were still at the nascent soul stage after all. This kind of small matter could not stop them at all. As for the darkness of this place, it was not a big problem for Lin Yi. In the 5-poison swamp, he could not easily use his divine sense. But in this place, there was no such restriction. Even if the seawater still had a lot of barriers to divine sense, for Lin Yi, who was used to the high-pressure isolation of the 5-poison swamp, this barrier was nothing. Since he could sense it with his divine sense, it did not matter if he could not see it with his naked eyes. However, for some reason, after such a long time, when he reused his divine sense, Lin Yi suddenly found that the strength of his divine sense was at least several times stronger than before, whether it was the sensing range or the clarity. Suddenly discovering this unexpected surprise, even Lin Yi could not help but be a little stunned. This feeling was like a dream, and he could not react for a long time. Although his strength was no longer the same as when he first entered the 5-poison swamp, Lin Yi had never specially cultivated his divine sense. Firstly, he had not reached that level. Secondly, under the pressure of the 5 elements' murderous qi, he could not even use his divine sense. Even if he wanted to cultivate, he was powerless. Who would have thought that unknowingly, his divine sense would soar so much? However, after Lin Yi was stunned for a moment, he finally came up with a reasonable explanation. Could it be that after breaking through to the nascent soul stage, the divine sense will naturally soar? Bullshit. The ghost tried hard not to curse out loud. Unlike the physical strength that could be quickly improved by taking elixirs, there was never a time for the divine sense to be reaped without effort. It could only rely on one's own continuous cultivation step by step and continuous understanding. Otherwise, let alone a nascent soul stage master, even a higher level master of the profound ascending stage, the strength of the divine sense would be absolutely weak. Lenny completely did not know how lucky he was. Advancing to the nascent soul stage would allow one's divine sense to skyrocket. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Why did Lin Yi's divine sense suddenly soar? He didn't know, but as a bystander, the ghost knew it very clearly. It was clearly because of the inexplicable awakening of his divine sense when he discovered the 5 Evils dragon. Such a rare opportunity had been encountered by this boy. If the strength of his divine sense did not soar, then it would really be unreasonable. However, although the ghost knew the reason, it could not tell Lin Yi because the process of divine sense awakening was very mysterious. It was a state of unconscious epiphany. As long as the ghost didn't say anything, Lin Yi would still have the opportunity to enter this state in the future. However, if Lin Yi himself knew about it, he would definitely lean towards this direction after tasting the sweetness. That would be counterproductive. The ghost was silent. Lin Yi thought that he had guessed correctly and regarded the skyrocketing of the divine sense as a normal situation. He did not think too much about it. He just used his divine sense to perceive everything around him. What he needed to care most now was not how his divine sense was, but whether there were sea beasts around. However, before Lin Yi's divine sense was fully released, his heart was suddenly shocked without warning. An overwhelming pressure instantly forced his divine sense back into his body. Under the violent backlash, Lin Yi suddenly spat out a big mouthful of blood. Lin Yi's face changed in an instant. He had a bad feeling before, but he did not expect that the premonition would come true. There was really a terrifying super-existence in this place. Just the pressure alone could make his divine sense suffer such a backlash. Even the 5 Evils dragon at the Earth opening stage could not do this. A horrifying thought suddenly flashed through Lin Yi's mind. If it was stronger than the 5 Evils dragon, wouldn't it be at least the existence of the sea-splitting stage? This endless sea was really unfathomable. Lin Yi was really full of bitterness at this moment. If he had known that he would suddenly encounter a super sea beast at the sea-splitting stage, he would have directly left the 5 Poison Swamp. Facing the West Mountain Old Sect, at least he would have a chance to survive. Now that he was facing a sea beast at the sea-splitting stage, he did not even dare to move. It wasn't just Lin. The ghost thing was shocked as well, but it took a while for it to react before letting out a sigh of relief. What a strong sea beast. Its soul is still intact, even after death. It's almost as strong as me. Lin Yi's eyes widened as he looked at Lin Yi. What a strong sea beast. Its soul is still intact, even after death. It's almost as strong as me, dead. This is the soul essence left behind after its death. Lin Yi heard this and suddenly became happy. No wonder it gave him the same feeling as the 5 Poison Flood Dragon Graveyard. The only difference was that this pressure was stronger and more aggressive. Well, this soul essence is on the verge of collapse and will soon completely dissipate. In contrast, I am much luckier. It is only the last bit of obsession that has not dissipated. It has long lost its thoughts and consciousness. The ghost could not help but sigh. This scene made him feel the same. After all, he was like this in the secular world. If he did not meet Lin Yi, he might also be left with a bit of unconscious obsession. One must know that the environment in the secular world was much worse than here. Soul essence would only die faster and more thoroughly. Obsession. Lin Yi could not help but be a little speechless. If the opponent was a complete soul essence, then it was not difficult to understand why a peak early nascent soul master like him would be in such a state. But this was only a bit of remnant obsession. What was this? Yes, it's the last bit of obsession left behind before the primordial spirit disperses. When one's strength reaches a certain level, a random thought can exist independently in the world. Even if the physical body is destroyed, the primordial spirit will continue to exist, just like this sea beast in front of us. In fact, the Five Poisons Flood Dragon was the same, but it entrusted everything to the five evils, so its obsession was not as strong as this one. Explain the ghostly thing. The last bit of remnant obsession can be so powerful. This is really unimaginable. Lin, he suddenly felt that his horizons had been broadened. He was now at the peak early nascent soul, but according to the ghost, he had not even reached the threshold to systematically cultivate his divine sense. It was really a long time before he could reach such a terrifying realm where a thought could not be destroyed. Chapter 4583. Okay. Lin nodded and immediately led the spiritual bird towards the remnant consciousness. Because of the existence of this terrible obsession, other sea beasts would hide far away. So, as the ghost said, this place would not be dangerous. As he got closer and closer to the remnant consciousness, Lin felt murderous aura constantly surging towards him from all directions. Each aura was fiercer and fiercer than the one before, making people feel extremely depressed and creeped out. Gradually, Lin finally came to the spatial source of the obsession. There was a faint layer of light in this place. Even without divine sense, he could easily see the surrounding scene. He couldn't help but exclaim, "What a terrible battlefield!" There was no doubt that there was a battlefield in front of them. Traces of an incomparably brutal battle could be seen everywhere. However, this was not a battle between human cultivators. Human cultivators would never come here to fight. This was an earth-shattering battle between two extremely powerful super beast clans. As far as Lin could see, it was full of neatly broken reefs, dead corals, and the most conspicuous thing was the eerie white bones of the sea beasts. This was a huge graveyard of sea beasts. After a moment of shock, Lin quickly found the source of the lingering will. It came from an extremely large corpse. Judging from the surroundings, this battle should have happened a long time ago, but the corpse in front of him didn't seem to be rotting at all. If even a random will could exist on its own, then it wasn't strange that the corpse didn't rot or decay. Looking at the huge and even spectacular corpse in front of him, Lin could not help but feel a sense of admiration from the bottom of his heart. Whether it was humans or beasts, it was an innate instinct for all creatures to admire the top existences. Lin didn't know what kind of sea beast it was. Its body was as big as a mountain, and it looked like a giant electric eel at first glance. But upon closer inspection, it didn't look like it, whether it was the exposed fangs or not. Whether it was the ferocious fangs exposed, or the dense and ferocious scales that were like giant knives, they constantly declared the horror and ferocity of its life. This corpse was definitely a rare treasure in the world. This was Lin Yi's first reaction. As the saying goes, every part of a spirit beast's body is a treasure. The more powerful the spirit beast, the higher the value of every part of its body. Naturally, the same principle applies to sea beasts. The corpse of a nascent soul-stage spirit beast can be sold for a shockingly high price, and this giant electric eel-like sea beast in front of him is at least at the sea-splitting stage, or even stronger. What price would it fetch if it were to be sold? Lin no longer had any desire for spiritual jades. But when he thought of the scene that would make everyone go wild for it, even he couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. Moreover, even if he didn't auction it off, this corpse would definitely be of boundless use. Perhaps it wouldn't be of use for now, but it would definitely be of great use in the future. Thinking of this, Lin couldn't help but move forward to put the corpse into the space of the jade pendant. Although the other party was huge, Lin had the mentality of taking as many as he could. If he really couldn't fit them all, he could just dismember them on the spot. He couldn't just leave with a pile of ready-made treasures in front of him, empty-handed. That was a wastrel. However, Lin suddenly frowned. He found that no matter how he tried to control the huge corpse in front of him, it didn't move at all. He couldn't put it into the space of the jade pendant at all. You'd better save it. The ghostly thing finally couldn't stand it anymore. It laughed cruelly and said, "Although this guy's been dead for who knows how many years, it still has remnants of its obsession. You can't put it in at all. Unless you can crush this obsession, that's more like it." Lin, he suddenly felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. Only then did he realize that since there were remnants of the obsession in the other party's body, it was equivalent to a living thing. Either it wholeheartedly surrendered to him, or it was like the ghostly thing said to destroy this obsession. Otherwise, it would be impossible to put it into the space of the jade pendant. But the problem was that the other party was at least a super existence at the sea-splitting stage. Honestly speaking, Lin didn't even have the qualifications to worship it in person. Even if it was just a remnant obsession, it could easily cause him to vomit blood. With Lin Yi's current strength, it was simply a fool's dream to want to destroy this obsession. Looking at such a huge treasure, but being helpless because of his lack of strength, this feeling was really depressing. Lin, he shook his head helplessly, but still reached out to touch the corpse. Even if he couldn't put the whole thing into the space of the jade pendant, he could at least break off something. After all, even if it was just a piece of scale on the other party's body, it must be a treasure that was hard to find in the world. However, the moment his hand touched the scale, Lin Yi's whole body suddenly quivered, and then he couldn't move. On the surface, there was no special difference, but at this moment, his brain seemed to explode. He only felt that countless complex information was stuffed into his brain. Scenes flashed quickly, dazzling him and making him dizzy. With a splitting headache, Lin Yi was shocked and quickly wanted to take his hand back, but he found that the corpse seemed to have a magic power that firmly sucked his hand. Lin Yi couldn't move at all, and at this moment, the scenes that were reflected in his mind finally became clear, evolving into a complete memory fragment, as if it was another real existence, making people unconsciously immersed in it. It was still this unfathomable seabed. This super sea beast that looked like a giant electric eel was silent, quietly lurking in the deep gully sand, and a few miles in front of it was a fresh sea beast corpse. It seemed to be a powerful existence at the sea overlord level, but its stomach was split open, and around the wound was a scorched black. Its internal organs and blood kept flowing out, attracting all the sea beasts from all directions. This was a rare underwater feast. The sea beasts that were attracted were all fierce and ferocious, but they had no intention of attacking each other. Instead, they eagerly pounced on the huge sea beast's corpse. They didn't need to fight. The sea beast's corpse was already enough for them to fill their stomachs. Of course, if it wasn't enough after eating, then a bloody battle was inevitable. Chapter 4584. This was indeed an undersea feast, but the host of the feast was not the hundreds of fierce sea beasts that had gathered. They were just food on the table, nothing more. Lin Yi looked at the shocking scene in his mind and suddenly became speechless. He watched the super sea beast that looked like a giant electric eel surged out and devoured all the sea beasts that were electrocuted by it. Even Lin Yi couldn't help but have an urge to kneel down and surrender to it. After eating everything, the giant electric eel only left the bloody and tempting sea beast corpse, and it turned around and lurked in the deep sand again, waiting for prey to take the bait again. Lin Yi looked at this scene thoughtfully. The ghost once said that although the sea beasts and the spirit beasts were both beasts, they were completely different systems. To some extent, the spirit beasts were not much different from human cultivators. Their long lives were mainly focused on cultivation. However, the sea beasts were different. No matter how powerful the sea beasts were, they still maintained an extremely high bestial nature. Therefore, they rarely took the initiative to cultivate. For them, eating blood was the best way to cultivate. The higher the level of existence they ate, the faster their strength would increase. This was a pure law of nature. The law of the jungle was vividly reflected in them. However, compared to the way of survival of the sea beasts, what interested Lin Yi more was another thing, the dark purple electric arc that flashed by just now. Lin Yi had been carefully observing from the beginning. The hundreds of sea beasts that were attracted by the smell of blood were at least above the mysterious ascending stage. There were many sea beasts that were at the mountain opening stage, and there were even more than one at the sea splitting stage. However, with just a flash of electric arc, all the sea beasts were electrocuted without any suspense. What a terrifying strength! At that moment, Lin Yi once again experienced what it meant to be creeped out. However, in addition to the fear in his heart, he did not know why he had a strange impulse. In his mind, he kept recalling the scene of the deep purple electric arc streaking across, and the restless feeling became more and more intense. Out of his instinct to constantly become stronger, Lin Yi subconsciously wanted to imitate it. Unfortunately, this scene was too fast and too short. Even if he kept replaying it in his mind, he couldn't see it clearly. Lin Yi had the instinctive urge to imitate it, but he couldn't grasp its essence. The memory fragments that were reflected in his mind continued. The giant electric eel was still lurking in the sand in the deep gully. However, this time, it did not attract those bloodthirsty sea beasts. In fact, the previous time, all the powerful sea beasts within 100 miles had been eaten clean. If they wanted to catch another wave of sea beasts, they would have to wait for a few months. However, this time, an uninvited guest came after just a few hours. 5 poison dragon. Looking at the existence and the memory fragments from afar, Lin Yi's eyes suddenly narrowed. This time, it was a dragon that shone with 5 different colors. This appearance was exactly the same as the most powerful 5 elements killing intent that he had seen before, but it felt more real. Its body was larger, and its aura was more threatening. He'd never seen a 5 poison Jiao dragon before, but Lin Yi was certain that this was a 5 poison Jiao dragon. He slowly swam to the side of the sea beast's corpse. After the 5 poison dragon circled around it, it did not eagerly open its mouth to devour like the other sea beasts. After all, it was a true super spiritual beast. Although eating flesh and blood was still effective for it, it was not as attractive as eating sea beasts. Moreover, a few hours ago, over 100 powerful sea beasts had died here. There was still a thick, killing intent lingering in the surrounding seawater. Even Lin Yi could easily sense that something was wrong, let alone the 5 poison dragon. The giant electric eel seemed to be very patient. No matter how the 5 poison dragons swam back and forth, it just hid in the deep sand and did not move. Although its body was huge, it perfectly blended in with its surroundings. Even the aura of its body was no different from its surroundings. Even though Lin Yi knew that it was hiding here, he could not find it after a moment of distraction. He could not see any flaws at all. Only the unique perspective in the memory fragments told Lin Yi that this super electric eel had not really quieted down. It had been closely watching the 5 poison dragons' every move from beginning to end. It seemed to be ready to make a move at any time, ready to electrocute it to death, and then eat it to its heart's content. An almost undetectable electric current spread throughout the surrounding sea, covering a range of thousands of miles. However, because it was too weak, no creature in the sea could sense anything strange. This was a unique sensing method that belonged to the giant electric eel. It did not have eyes, nor did it use divine sense. However, these tiny electric currents were far more effective than divine sense. They were clearer and left no traces. The 5 poison dragon was the same as the other creatures in the sea. It did not seem to sense the existence of the giant electric eel at all. After circling the sea beast's corpse twice, it finally prepared to eat it. However, at this moment, the deep purple electric arc that had appeared before descended once again. Lin Yi's heart immediately tightened. Seeing that the 5 poison dragon was about to follow in the footsteps of the hundreds of powerful sea beasts, he did not expect that the 5 poison dragon, which had been struck by the deep purple electric arc, would suddenly turn into a phantom formed from vital energy, and then quickly dissipated. The true body of the 5 poison dragon had unknowingly appeared on top of the giant electric eel's head. Accompanied by an earth-shaking dragon roar, it waved its front claws, and a stream of 5-colored vital energy instantly pierced through the giant electric eel's body. Seeing this, Lin Yi's eyelids suddenly trembled. After cultivating in the underground space for so long, his familiarity with the five elements' murderous aura could be said to be unparalleled. The stream of five-colored vital energy that the five-poison dragon had released was clearly an enhanced version of the five elements' murderous aura. If there was any difference between the two, it would be that it did not have the kind of natural intelligence that was born on its own. Instead, it was more easily controlled. When Lin Yi first saw the five elements' murderous aura, the ghost had said that as long as his strength was strong enough, he would be able to release a stream of five elements' murderous aura with a wave of his hand. At that time, Lin Yi had yearned to be able to do it himself. However, he did not have the extravagant hope of reaching this step in his subsequent cultivation. This was because with his current strength, it was impossible for him to activate the five elements' murderous aura. Chapter 4585. As he sighed with emotion, the memory fragments reflected in Lin Yi's mind suddenly became intense. The five elements' murderous aura of the five poisons flood dragon did not kill it in one blow. Instead, it completely stimulated the ferocity of the giant electric eel. When a super sea beast that could even swallow an existence at the sea-splitting stage went berserk, this scene was tantamount to the end of the world. The surging battle intent and the sharp murderous aura seemed to be the only two things left between heaven and earth, covering the sky and covering the earth in all directions. Out of his instinct to protect himself, Lin Yi subconsciously wanted to escape from this terrible and dangerous battlefield. Even if he only saw this scene in the memory fragments, the terrifying pressure that seemed to have materialized still made him breathless. However, just like at the beginning, Lin Yi had already fallen into the memory fragments and could not extricate himself. At this moment, he could not control his own will at all. The scene of the destructive battle between the five poisons flood dragon and the giant electric eel was deeply imprinted in his mind uncontrollably. Even if he closed his eyes, everything was always clear. In an instant, Lin Yi's whole body began to tremble violently like a sieve. He was on the verge of collapse. Just as the ghostly thing could not help but want to interrupt, Lin Yi suddenly stopped moving and entered a strange state. TSK, is this kid really blessed? Or is his innate talent so unique? How can he always encounter such good things that others can't even dream of? The ghostly thing could not help but be amazed. At this moment, Lin Yi had once again entered an extremely mysterious state of epiphany. However, it was different from the unconscious awakening of his divine sense last time. This time, to see what he could comprehend, he would only know after he woke up. The only thing the ghostly thing could do now was to keep a lookout for him. This opportunity could not be asked for. The book's seeking net must not be interrupted by external forces. At this moment, in Lin Yi's sea of consciousness, the five poisons flood dragon and the giant electric eel were fighting fiercely. Powerful five elements, murderous aura, and deep purple electric arcs were constantly colliding between heaven and earth. Every time they collided, the world changed color. For the surrounding seas, and even the entire ocean, it was like they had experienced an apocalyptic disaster. At this time, Lin Yi once again felt the stirring instinctively when he first saw the dark purple electric arc. However, this time, he was not imitating the dark purple electric arc, but the five elements' murderous aura released by the five poison dragon. After all, Lin Yi had a deep understanding of the five elements' murderous aura, and now that he saw the five poison serpent using it again and again, it was as if he had a ready-made teacher. It was an obvious opportunity for him to learn, and if he didn't hurry up and learn, that Lin Yi was really stupid. Be it the five poison flood dragon or the giant electric eel, they were both super ferocious beasts that should not exist in this world. Furthermore, they seemed to be on par with each other in terms of strength. This unprecedented battle did not end in just a few moves. Instead, it unexpectedly fell into a stalemate of attrition. The more they fought, the angrier they became. In the end, they used all their trump cards and entered a state of fighting to the death. This benefited Lin Yi, who was a bystander. Otherwise, if the 5 poison flood dragons attack was also like the giant electric eel's deep purple electric arc, the battle ended in a flash. If it ended in a flash, he would not even be able to tell how it attacked, let alone learn it secretly. But now, disregarding everything else, the 5 poison flood dragon had activated the 5 elements murderous chi no less than 100 times. The entire activation process was clearly seen by Lin Yi, who was a bystander and a peeping scholar. In addition, he already had a deep understanding of the 5 elements murderous chi. Learning it secretly was naturally twice the result with half the effort. This was especially so for Lin Yi, who was currently immersed in a rare state of epiphany. Regardless of whether it was his insight or his ability to practice, they were far from ordinary. Normally, he would not even dare to think about it. At this moment, he instinctively began to do things, learning bit by bit. Every time the 5 poison flood dragon activated the 5 elements murderous chi, Lin Yi would try to imitate it. Although he was confused at first, after repeating it over 100 times, Lin Yi's actions gradually began to look more like it. They were both murderous chi of the 5 elements. Although the murderous chi that was activated by the 5 poison flood dragon and the murderous chi that was formed naturally were essentially the same, they were two completely different things if one were to truly deconstruct them. The former was a powerful martial art that could be controlled by cultivators, while the latter was a powerful force that belonged to the heavens and earth. It could not be desecrated, nor could it be imitated. After an unknown amount of time, a faint stream of vital energy suddenly overflowed from Lin Yi's palm. In terms of power, it was completely unsightly. Any cultivator in the foundational stage could easily destroy it. However, after sensing this vital energy, even the ghostly thing could not help but be a little surprised. This was actually a murderous chi of the 5 elements. Although it was very weak, it was indeed a 5-colored vital energy. The 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were all present. There was no doubt that this was a real murderous chi of the 5 elements. He actually managed to learn it? This kid is really a freak. After being stunned for a while, the ghostly thing faintly cried out in shock. It did say that as long as one was strong enough, one could activate the murderous chi of the 5 elements, but that was at least after the mountain opening stage. Right now, Lin Yi was only at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. From the ghostly thing's point of view, a move like the murderous chi of the 5 elements was a terrifying martial art that could kill anyone in the mountain opening stage or even higher. Now, it was mastered by a kid at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. What kind of scene would that be? Once Lin Yi truly displayed the murderous chi of the 5 elements, that scene would definitely not be as simple as fighting against an enemy of a higher level. It would feel like a 3-year-old suddenly taking out a gun from his pocket. It was not a toy gun, but a real gun that could really take a person's life. Even with the ghostly thing's experience and knowledge, when he thought of that scene, he sincerely shuddered. After spending so much time with Lin Yi, he had always thought that Lin Yi was a monster among the human beings. However, now that he thought about it, not only human beings, but all the creatures in the world were definitely abnormal existences. He was definitely even more abnormal than the former Azure Dragon. After successfully activating the murderous chi of the 5 elements for the first time, Lin Yi's face did not show any expression of joy. Instead, he continued to immerse himself in that state, still repeating it over and over again. The intensity of the murderous chi of the 5 elements became stronger little by little. Every time he practiced it, it became stronger. In the beginning, it was only at the level of the foundation building stage. Gradually, it became the level of the golden core stage, and then the level of the nascent soul stage. Finally, he could fully activate it with ease, and it became a brand new martial art that belonged to Lin Yi alone. Chapter 4586. After mastering the murderous aura of the 5 elements, Lin Yi did not stop. After all, there was no harm in learning more skills. After secretly learning from the 5 poison dragon, he turned his attention to the giant electric eel and began to study the dark purple electric arc. Since it could compete with the murderous aura of the 5 elements for so long without being at a disadvantage, Lin Yi believed that if he could learn it and use it for himself, it would be a heaven-defying martial skill that would not be inferior to the murderous aura of the 5 elements. This would be a powerful trump card that would come in handy in the future. However, this time, no matter how much Lin Yi practiced, he could not grasp the key. This dark purple electric arc was obviously a move of the thunder attribute. Lin Yi did not have the thunder attribute, so he could not use it as it was. He could only try to understand the essence of it and then simulate it with the fire attribute martial skill. This was not a wrong idea. The martial skills in the world were all the same. It was not that Lin Yi had not done similar things before, but it was different this time. Once he mastered this dark purple electric arc, it would definitely be a top-level martial skill. It was not easy to understand it. Moreover, he had just successfully understood the murderous aura of the 5 elements. It was not that he had the talent of all 5 elements, but that he had been dealing with the murderous aura of the 5 elements for more than half a year. He had a deep understanding of it, which was why he was able to master it so quickly. However, this dark purple electric arc of the giant electric eel was something he had never seen before. How could he understand it? It was not that Lin Yi did not understand this, but this opportunity was too rare. He did not want to give up so easily. Naturally, the more top-level martial skills, the better. If he missed this opportunity, there would not be another one. Lin Yi might not be able to see a super sea beast like the giant electric eel in his lifetime. Even if he had no clue, Lin Yi persisted in practicing. If 100 times did not work, then 200 times. If 200 times did not work, then 500 times. As long as he persisted, he believed that he would see results. Lin Yi's perseverance was undeniable. No matter how clueless he could still persevere. However, after trying for 600 or 700 times, the memory fragment that was reflected in his mind suddenly shattered. His entire consciousness seemed to be torn apart. The pain was unbearable, and he spat out a large mouthful of blood on the spot. Lin Yi's face was deathly pale, and it took him a long time to finally recover. Things had developed to this point, and it was difficult to continue. Because the memory fragments had been shattered, no matter how strong his willpower was, it was useless. He could only accept his fate and accept reality. After trying so hard for so long, he was still unable to comprehend a complete martial technique from the huge electric eel. This result made Lin Yi feel somewhat disheartened. However, Lin Yi did not really become depressed. After all, he had successfully learned the 5 elements murderous aura. With this heaven-defying martial skill as a foundation, it could be said that he had gained a great harvest this time. Although it was not a small regret that he could not comprehend the giant electric eel's thunder martial skill, fate was bound to come to an end soon. Lin Yi was not a greedy person. What's more, it was only the 5 elements murderous aura. Lin Yi's combat power had increased by more than several times. He was the strongest nascent soul stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. He was confident that he could deal with a peak nascent soul stage master when he was at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, and now that he had mastered the 5 elements murderous aura. Even if he encountered a profound ascending stage master, he still had the capital to fight. A mere peak early Yuanying stage was enough to compete with a master of the profound ascending stage. If even this was not enough, if he was still not satisfied, then Lin Yi would really be spurned to death by the world's heroes. How could others live? Sigh, what a pity. Lin Yi shook his head slightly. It was not because he could not comprehend the lightning martial technique. Instead, it was because the memory fragments that entered his mind had suddenly shattered into many incomplete fragments. It was impossible for him to comprehend anything of value from them. However, through these fragmented memory fragments, Lin Yi could more or less see the aftermath. The battle between the five-poison dragon and the giant electric eel didn't have a clear winner. After fighting for who knows how long, it finally ended in a lose-lose situation. Because the battle was too big, the process of fighting had attracted the attention of many super-existences. Although they didn't dare to approach because they were afraid of the pressure of the five-poison dragon and the giant electric eel, once they were given the opportunity to attack, no matter who won this battle, it would be a dead end. The five-poison dragon wasn't stupid, and the giant electric eel wasn't stupid either. When they both noticed that something was wrong, the two super monsters chose to stop fighting at the same time. So even if they were seriously injured, because neither of them died, those who were watching from afar couldn't figure out their strength, so none of them dared to act rashly. After 1,000 years, fight again. This was the message left by the five-poison dragon before it left. The giant electric eel's response was a pillar of lightning that shot into the sky. It used the most domineering and arrogant method to accept this challenge. At the same time, it completely scared away those who were watching it. After confirming that the five poisons flood dragon had completely disappeared from this region of the sea, the giant electric eel slowly dragged its battered body back to its original hiding place to recover. However, its injuries were far too severe. It did not know how long it had been, perhaps years, perhaps decades, or even centuries. In the end, it was unable to recover its vitality, and its tremendous vitality slowly disappeared from its body. Finally, it became the corpse that stood before them. As for the five poisons flood dragon, it had never appeared again. Perhaps it was dead as well. After all, its injuries were not much lighter than the giant electric eel's. Of course, it was also possible that it was still alive. It was just hiding somewhere and licking its wounds, waiting for a comeback. The memory fragments stopped there. In the end, he didn't see the end of the five-poison dragon. However, according to his speculation, it probably suffered the same fate as the giant electric eel. This was not only because of its heavy injuries, but also because it didn't return to the mysterious space beneath the five-poison swamp. According to the five-poison dragon, that place had always been the territory of the five-poison dragon. The five elements killing intent was fatal to other spiritual beasts, but it was a great supplement to the five-poison dragon. If the five-poison dragon wanted to heal, it would definitely return to the mysterious space as soon as possible. However, it didn't do so, which meant that something must have happened during the process, and it was very likely that it died. Chapter 4587. After all, its master had never walked through this exit, so it was unlikely that he would suddenly appear in the sea. Furthermore, their strengths did not match. This five-poison flood dragon and the giant electric eel were both existences above the sea-splitting stage, while the five-poison dragon's master was only at the sea-splitting stage. It is an element of when he thought of the five-poison flood dragon and the giant electric eel, these two terrifying existences, one had fallen and the other was very likely to fall, he could not help but sigh. The world was unpredictable. If the two of them were still alive, especially the five-poison flood dragon, the situation in the entire South Continent would probably be very different. At the very least, the vermilion bird would not be able to act as he pleased as he did now. It would be very difficult for the tragedy that had happened to the five-poison dragon's master to repeat itself. After all, this guy's strength was too ferocious and unreasonable. Even the vermilion bird might not be able to do anything to it. As He sighed, the fragmented memory in his mind fell apart even more. In the end, it turned into powder and completely disappeared, as if it had never existed. The surrounding sea suddenly became calm again, and it was an unprecedented calm. There was no trace of the mountain-like pressure that he had felt before. He was slightly startled. The obsession left by the giant electric eel had disappeared. Could it be that the memory fragment was its obsession? When the memory fragment shattered, its obsession also disappeared. He was stunned for a long time. He carefully recalled the situation just now, and then came to a sudden realization. Did I accept its inheritance? Of course it counts. Although it didn't directly bestow you with strength, the memory itself is the most precious inheritance. Not to mention, you were able to comprehend a martial skill like the 5 elements killing chi. I have to say, you are really lucky. Even I'm a little envious. The ghostly thing half-jokingly said. I see. Lenny took a deep breath and nodded with some regret. It seems that I really have to thank this sea beast. It and the 5 poison flood dragon can be considered half a master to me. It's just that I don't even know what race it is, so I won't be able to pay my respects to it in the future. What a pity. There's nothing to be pitiful about. You were able to comprehend the 5 elements, killing chi from its lingering obsession. This is your own ability and fortune. In turn, it has to thank you properly. The ghostly thing said disapprovingly. Huh, what do you mean? Lenny couldn't help but ask curiously. If you hadn't interfered, this obsession of his would definitely have continued to exist, and he would be unable to free himself from it for all eternity. I don't need to say any more about how tragic it is. But now that the obsession is gone, it can be considered to have finished what it started. Don't you think it should be thanking you? The ghostly thing laughed. All right, so that's how it is. Lenny smiled, but he still bowed deeply to the corpse of the giant electric eel. In any case, he was the one who benefited from it, and he was always grateful to this super sea monster. He did not dare to forget this inheritance. It's a pity that this guy's primordial spirit has perished, and he's been reduced to this last bit of obsession. There's nothing substantial that can be passed on to you. You can only comprehend it by yourself through memory fragments. Otherwise, you'll definitely gain more this time. That's the real, big opportunity. The ghostly thing felt sorry for Lenny. To miss out on such an opportunity that only comes once in 10,000 years, it was truly a pity. Just a small piece of memory was enough for him to understand the 5 elements of murderous aura. If it was a complete inheritance like the 5 Bane Dragon, he would have been able to understand it. What would that be like? That's impossible. If this C.B. Senior really does have a complete primordial soul, then it's impossible. Why would he pass it on to me for no reason? After all, I'm not a sea beast, nor am I its disciple. Perhaps its first reaction will be to seize my body and be reborn. He laughed heartily. He didn't feel any regret at all. There were no ifs in this world, and he didn't have the habit of fantasizing. That's true. The ghostly thing smiled. It understood after thinking about it. Even if it didn't want to seize Yi Shiwen's body and be reborn, it would never seek its own death by passing on everything to a human it didn't know. It was better to live than to die. Its fragmented primordial spirit was better than being dead. While he was talking to the ghostly thing, the huge corpse in front of him suddenly collapsed for some unknown reason. The originally majestic behemoth collapsed in a short period of time, turning into a large pile of powder that quickly drifted away with the sea current. All this happened without warning. Lenny looked at the empty space in front of him and couldn't help but be stunned. He couldn't say a word for a long time. Well, what's going on? He finally asked after a long time. He almost bit his tongue off. As you can see, the corpse collapsed. The ghostly thing didn't seem surprised at all. Isn't that a little too fast? It was clearly fine before. How did it collapse just like that? Lenny couldn't help but be dumbfounded. He had tried to break off the scales before. Although it was interrupted because of the sudden influx of memory fragments, there was absolutely no doubt that the corpse was extremely strong. Previously, its obsession hadn't dissipated, so it could still maintain the corpse in its original state. But now, without the umbrella of obsession, this corpse is equivalent to an unearthed cultural relic that suddenly sees the light of day again. Isn't this a common situation in your secular world? Think about how old this corpse is. Even if it's not 1,000 years old, looking at its posture, it must be at least a few hundred years old. If it wasn't for the obsession, there wouldn't be any bones left. The corrosion of the sea is much stronger than that of the ground, the ghostly thing explained. Okay, so that's what happened. I thought I accidentally touched some taboo. He breathed a sigh of relief with some lingering fear. Then, a look of regret appeared on his face. He originally wanted to get some treasures from his corpse. With the terrifying power of the giant eel, he believed that whatever he got from this corpse would be the most precious treasure in the world. But now, he didn't have the chance. Don't think about those useless things anymore. I advise you to hurry up and go, kid. If you stay here for a while, I'm afraid we'll have to accompany this guy. The ghostly thing suddenly reminded with a strange smile. Chapter 4588. Thinking of this, Lin did not dare to neglect and quickly ordered the spirit bird to leave the bottom of the sea as soon as possible. Although his combat power had skyrocketed, if he was really entangled by sea beasts in such a place, the possibility of escaping was almost zero. The speed of the spirit bird was extremely fast, even in this endless sea, because he had been isolating the seawater with a genuine chi. Its speed could not be underestimated. In any case, it was a spirit beast of the original soul stage, so it was impossible for it to be helpless in the sea. He was afraid of being entangled by sea beasts, but the spirit bird was even more afraid. At this moment, the terrifying speed that erupted at this moment made a little stunned. He had always thought that the spirit bird had no strong points except for speed. Now it seemed that this was not wrong. Speed was indeed this bird's specialty, and the endless sea could not stop it. He was secretly speechless. With the speed that the spirit bird showed at this moment, many native sea beasts might not be able to catch up with it. He even suspected that this guy was originally a water bird, but it had not been discovered before. While he was thinking about it, the spirit bird had already carried into the sky, like a sharp arrow piercing through the sea and across the sky. The whole process was a mess, and from beginning to end, they were not targeted by any sea beasts. After more than half a year, this was the first time that he could really see the light of day again. The depressed state of mind that had been suppressed for a long time was finally released. He felt that his whole body was a lot lighter. Combined with the scene at this time, it was quite a transcendent posture of a bird flying in the sky. It's really dangerous. He looked down and found that at the place where he rushed up, there were several huge shadows at this moment. Although he could not tell what kind of sea beasts they were, judging from their size, they should not be easy to deal with. He could not help but secretly feel lucky that he ran fast enough, otherwise he would really be in danger. After calming down a little, he immediately let the spirit bird fly in the direction of the North Island. This time, because he was chased by the old sect of West Mountain, he had exceeded the time limit of the task for a long time. He didn't know if anything had happened in the North Island. At this moment, he was eager to go home. Although he was not a native of the North Island, on this Heaven Stage Island, the North Island was his second hometown. All the familiar people and things were in the North Island. In his heart, the North Island was incomparable to other places. The spirit bird chirped excitedly and immediately spread its wings to fly towards the north. Its current excitement was even greater than Lin Yi's. It wasn't that it was attached to Bei Dao. It was just that ever since it had reached the original infant stage, it could finally test its extreme speed. The spirit bird clan had an instinctive pursuit of speed. If they were not allowed to experience the extreme speed that they were so proud of from time to time, they would really go crazy. The spirit bird that Huang Xiaodao had left behind had been restrained for over 3 months. If it was not allowed to soar to its heart's content, it might really go crazy. This spirit bird is quite interesting. The ghostly thing suddenly said with great interest. What's wrong? He couldn't help but feel strange when he heard it. At this moment, he was a little shocked by the speed of the spirit bird he was sitting on. He originally thought that this spirit bird's talent was mediocre. Even if its strength had skyrocketed, its speed would at most increase by a few times. But now it seemed that it was not just a few times, it was simply dozens of times. Do you know that the spirit bird is recognized as the most useless clan among all the spirit beasts? The ghostly thing asked instead of answering. It can't be right. He grinned disapprovingly. Although the spirit bird couldn't compare to many other powerful spirit beasts he had seen, it was recognized as the most useless. That was a bit exaggerated. There are so many spirit beasts in the world, and there was always one that was weaker than the spirit bird. I'm not the one who said that. It's something recognized by the spirit beast clan. The ghostly thing smiled and then added, in my opinion, even if the spirit bird clan isn't really the weakest, it's definitely one of them. There's no doubt about that. Why? Lin, he still couldn't figure it out. The reason is very simple. Every spirit beast clan has their own unique racial talent. Some are strong, some are weak, and there's a variety of them. But one thing is for sure, all spirit beasts have racial talent. There's only one clan that's an exception, and that's the spirit bird. The ghostly thing explained. Huh? Lin, he was instantly stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this, but after thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be the case. Every spirit beast he had seen before had racial talent. Even the skybolt pig, which had 0 combat power, had a unique treasure hunting talent. He had never seen this spirit bird before. Although its level wasn't low, the spirit bird didn't seem to be much different from other ordinary birds. If it wasn't for the fact that they can rely on the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to cultivate, they wouldn't have been classified as a spirit beast. A spirit beast clan that doesn't even have racial talent. Don't you think they're the weakest? The ghostly thing paused for a moment, then said, the spirit bird doesn't have any racial talent. If you really want to find a specialty, the only thing that barely meets this standard is their speed. But that's all. There are more than 1 or 2 clans that are faster than them. All right, that sounds really sad. Lin, he was speechless as he looked at the spirit bird. This thing wasn't just average, it simply didn't have any talent at all. If it was another original infant stage spirit beast, then it would definitely be a powerful fighting force that couldn't be ignored. But this was a spirit bird. So what if it was in the original infant stage? If he really forced it to fight, then it would at most be an enlarged version of a poultry. That kind of scene was something that Lin, he couldn't bear to look at. Don't be in a hurry to be disappointed. Although the spirit bird clan doesn't have any natural talent, it doesn't mean that they don't have a chance to turn things around. According to what I know, they're the only spirit beast clan that can cultivate their speed to the extreme. Although they are a special case, at least they have potential. The ghostly thing said, cultivate their speed to the extreme? Didn't you just say that there are more than 1 or 2 clans that are faster than them? Lin, he was confused. Chapter 4589. Senior, you mean to say that this fellow is also a heavenly spirit bird? Hearing this, Lin, he immediately became excited. A heavenly spirit bird's strength meant that he would have more help. If it really was a heavenly spirit bird with unparalleled speed, then it would definitely be of great use in the future. That's hard to say. The heavenly spirit bird clan has only produced 1 heavenly spirit bird in a few thousand years. As for whether this fellow has the chance to become the next heavenly spirit bird, I can't see it. The ghostly thing curled its lips. Then why did you say so much? Lin, he was momentarily speechless. He had been happy for nothing. I'm telling you this because I suddenly realized that this fellow's speed is much faster than other spirit birds. Maybe it has some special characteristics in this area. Don't think too much about it. The ghostly thing laughed. Faster than other spirit birds? How much faster? Lin Yi's interest was piqued. Compared to other nascent soul stage spirit birds of the same level, its speed is at least 3 times faster. I'm not too sure about the specifics. Maybe it's because it's soaked in the star ink milk with you. The ghostly thing thought for a moment before replying. 3 times faster? That's already very exaggerated. Senior, now that you mention it, I feel that this fellow might really be a heavenly spirit bird. Lin Yi's eyes lit up when he heard this. The star ink milk's effect on spirit beasts was far less than that of human cultivators. If it was purely because of the star ink milk, it would at most be twice as fast as other nascent soul stage spirit birds. 3 times faster was simply impossible. Kid, don't be so wishful thinking. Whether or not it's a heavenly spirit bird depends on its future. The higher its level, the greater its speed advantage. Only then will it have a slight chance of becoming a heavenly spirit bird. Otherwise, it's all nonsense. The ghostly thing said nonchalantly. Although it was the one who started this topic, it really didn't think that this fellow could become a heavenly spirit bird. After all, the possibility of it becoming a heavenly spirit bird was too slim. It was even rarer than winning the lottery in the mortal world. Even if there's only a 1 in a million chance, it's still a chance. It's still a chance. It's better than nothing. Lenny grinned. Since there was nothing else to do, he didn't have the mood to meditate and cultivate for the time being. Thus, he sat on the back of the spirit bird and continued to chat with the ghostly thing, treating it as an eye-opener. After an hour, he was already far away from the South Island and the sea area of the South Continent. After all, the speed of the spirit bird was much faster than before. Although the sea area of the South Continent was vast, it was nothing compared to its extreme speed. He was thinking about when he could return to North Island. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable sense of panic in his heart. At the same time, the warning sound of the jade pendant rang out. A huge shadow suddenly covered the top of his head, and a cold, murderous aura assaulted his face. He was startled. It couldn't be the West Mountain Elder again, could it? He clearly didn't use the exit of the five-poison swamp. The West Mountain Old Master shouldn't have been able to detect him at all. If he was caught even then, how could he live? He raised his head to take a look, and his heart relaxed. Fortunately, it was not the West Mountain Sect Master. He relaxed, but the spirit bird under him looked very panicked, because the shadow came from a giant ferocious bird 10 feet away from his head. And it was a ferocious bird that he was familiar with, the ghost-eyed golden eagle. Judging from the momentum, the strength of this ghost-eyed golden eagle should be at the middle stage of Yuaniing realm. At the moment, a pair of gloomy ghost eyes were staring at him maliciously. It seemed that it would pounce on him at any time. He looked at the golden-eyed eagle above him, who was glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey, and then looked at his spirit bird, which was trembling with fear. He couldn't help but sigh. He was not afraid of not knowing what was good, but he was afraid of comparing. When the ghostly thing said that the spirit bird was the most useless spirit beast, he didn't think much of it. Now, with the comparison, it was obvious who was superior. Whether it was the appearance or the momentum, the ghost-eyed golden eagle won without any suspense. As for the strength, there was no need to talk about it. His spirit bird's trembling appearance had already shown everything. Even the speed that it was best at, the ghost-eyed golden eagle could easily catch up. It was a complete defeat in all aspects. As the ghostly thing said, the speed of the spirit bird could only be regarded as above average. Even if Huang Xiaodao was much faster than the other spirit birds, at present, it could only be regarded as above average. However, the ghost-eyed golden eagle was second to none in terms of speed, not to mention its strength was a level higher. Catching up with the spirit bird at the moment was not a problem at all for it. The future is long. If you can become a heavenly spirit bird, it will be easy to play with it. He smiled and comforted it. Although he knew that the other party was up to no good, he was still very relaxed at this time. With strength, there was confidence. Of course, there was nothing to panic about. Heavenly spirit bird? What kind of bullshit was that? You want to easily play with my ghost-eyed golden eagle to death? Such big words. Does your family know? At this time, a rough voice suddenly came from the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It's just a joke. I'm sorry to have made you laugh. He nodded slightly. He had long noticed that there was someone on the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. However, to him, as long as it wasn't a big shot like the Shishan Elder, there was nothing to be afraid of. It would be best if they lived in peace. However, if the other party really dared to make a move, it would be a good time to test the power of the 5 elements killing aura. A joke? But from your tone, why do I feel like it's true? Along with the man's voice, the ghost-eyed golden eagle suddenly lowered its altitude. Its sharp claws carried a frightening astral wind, almost tearing people apart. If it wasn't for the spirit bird dodging in time, it would have suffered a great loss immediately. After pulling a little distance between them, he looked coldly at the middle-aged man on the back of the ghost-eyed golden eagle. It was a typical curly-bearded man. His whole body exuded a fierce and domineering aura that made people's hearts palpitate. However, What made Lenny a little surprised was that this guy was actually wearing a pair of sunglasses. For a moment, Lin even thought that he had returned to the secular world. However, he immediately reacted. With the Central Chamber of Commerce blossoming everywhere on Heaven Stage Island, these products of the secular world had long become popular on Heaven Stage Island. Even high-tech products like computers were popular, let alone a small pair of sunglasses. It had to be said that this guy in front of him was quite good at dressing up. The curly-bearded man was already a person that people didn't dare to approach. Now that he wore a pair of sunglasses, it added a bit of a baleful aura. It was really daunting. However, that was to others. In Lin Yi's eyes, this guy was similar to Tsihua in the secular world. He was purely a gangster. Chapter 4590. Oh, your eyesight is not bad. You know that I want to rob you. Then what are you talking about? Hurry up and take out all the good stuff. The curly-bearded man immediately laughed and then added, "Don't play tricks on me. Those who ventured out of the South Continent must have good stuff in their hands. If you hand it over consciously, I can spare your life. If you play tricks on me, then I can only let you feed the sea beasts. You don't look like a fool. I hope you're a smart person." "I believe I am a smart person, but it's hard to say whether you are." "Robbery? Hee hee, this is really not a big deal in the South Continent Sea. But do you know what happened to those guys who robbed me last time?" Lin was still sitting on the back of the spirit bird and said with a playful smile. "What happened?" The curly-bearded man was not in a hurry to make a move. He also put on an expression like a cat playing with a mouse. He squinted at Lin Yi and seemed to be calculating how many benefits he could get this time. 3 were thrown into the sea to feed the beasts, and the last one is locked up. We don't know if he's alive or not, but I don't think you'll be that lucky. There's still the sea all around us, and it'd be easier to just feed the beasts. It'd be a perfect ending, don't you think?" Lin, he said seriously. TSK, you are really arrogant. You want to throw me into the sea to feed the sea beasts?" "Ha ha ha." The curly-bearded man suddenly laughed uncontrollably, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He was out of breath for a long time and could not stop. Lin glanced at him and suddenly ordered the spirit bird under him. It seems that he is a psychopath. He is so pitiful. God is kind to all living things. Let's go. After that, the man and the bird really left. The curly-bearded man, who was still laughing, almost fainted. Just now, Lenny looked at him as if he was looking at a fool. This kid actually dared to treat him as an idiot? With a scream, the ghost-eyed golden eagle, who was left behind, caught up in an instant. With lightning speed, it blocked in front of Lin Yi and the spirit bird. The corner of the curly-bearded man's mouth twitched. He stared coldly at Lin Yi and said, "You refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, right? Okay, you have guts. Today, I really don't want any treasure from you. Just because of what you said just now. You must die today." After that, the curly-bearded man's aura suddenly skyrocketed. A domineering aura pressed on Lin Yi and the spirit bird without reservation. The spirit bird's body was unstable and almost fell into the sea. Even Lin Yi's was shocked. This guy turned out to be a master. Although it seemed that he was only at the early stage of the mysterious ascension realm, experts of this level would have a foothold no matter where they went. Even the most powerful sects would treat them as distinguished guests. Not to mention being an elder in power, no matter how bad it was, he could at least be a guest. If he was in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, he would already have the opportunity to enter the Elders' Council. To be honest, Lin he had never thought that such an existence would come out to be a robber. The things in this world were really strange. There are all kinds of people. A master in the early stage of profound ascension couldn't make money, but he had to come out to be a robber. Looking at Lin Yi's incredulous eyes, the curly-bearded man suddenly laughed proudly again. He liked this kind of look the most, so every time he looked for someone to make a move, he would not show his cultivation at the early stage of profound ascension. Only when it was almost time to make a move would he show his sharpness. This was the feeling of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Scared? Ha ha ha. Unfortunately, it's too late. If you had taken the initiative to hand over the treasure just now, I might have let you live. But now, since I said that you must die, there is no second possibility. Don't you understand?" The curly-bearded man laughed wildly without any scruples. "Do I have the power?" He couldn't help but grin. Seeing that the guy was still looking at him like he was an idiot, he frowned slightly and said, "Are you really an idiot? If you really have the power, then I would have died the moment you said the word die. How could I still be alive now? I say, how did you get your strength at the early stage of profound ascension? Don't you need IQ to cultivate these days?" After hearing this, the curly-bearded man's face turned red. Even though he was wearing sunglasses, it could be seen that he was just boasting about himself. He was only at the early stage of the profound ascension realm, and he was still at least 108,000 miles away from the real verbally enforcing law. "You have a sharp tongue." "Good, very good. I've changed my mind now. I've decided not to throw you into the sea to feed the sea beasts. I'm going to cripple you, then hang you up with a rope and drag you into the sea to fish for sea beasts. What do you think of this idea?" The curly-bearded man said angrily, "It's not bad, but I think the sea beasts might not like to eat my meat. They definitely prefer to eat someone with a stronger smell of blood. It seems that you are more suitable." He smiled faintly. The curly-bearded man flew into a rage. He was choked for a long time and couldn't say a word. Only now did he finally realize one thing. If they really wanted to bicker, even if there were 10 of him, he wouldn't be a match for this sharp-tongued kid. "How about it? You also think it makes sense, right?" He crossed his arms and looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. If it was before, he probably wouldn't be in the mood to talk nonsense with a robber, even if the other party was an early-stage profound ascension master. But now he was in a good mood, and this was the first time he saw a living person in more than half a year, so he unconsciously wanted to play with him. Being looked at by like this, the curly-bearded man's anger soared to the heavens. He immediately lost the thought of a cat playing with a mouse, and immediately said with a murderous look, "I've seen many people who don't know life from death, but it's the first time I've seen someone as reckless as you. Kid, let me give you a word of advice. It's useless to just talk. It will only make your death more miserable. Remember this in your next life." After saying that, the curly-bearded man no longer gave a chance to speak. He suddenly pulled out a pitch-black long rod from behind him, and along with a roar, he smashed the rod down towards Yi's head from afar. His rod was 12 feet long, and the distance between the two parties was at least more than 10 feet. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be able to reach Yi, but when the rod fell, it turned into a large and fierce shadow of the rod that blotted out the sky and earth. The terrible, murderous aura that was revealed was enough to change the color of the sky. Chapter 4591. Accompanied by the horrifying whistling of the wind, mixed with the shadows of the rod, it was like a group of terrifying demons that chose to devour people. At this moment, Yi and the spirit bird were shrouded by the shadows of the staff. They were like a small boat in a raging storm, swaying in the wind and rain as if they could be destroyed at any time. If they were even grazed by the shadow of the staff, they would be doomed immediately. As expected of a master in the early stage of the profound ascension realm, he is really not simple. Yi saw this and smiled calmly. Not only was he not nervous, but he suddenly became a little excited. His eyes were extraordinary, and his fighting spirit was surging. In the face of the overwhelming rod shadow, Yi's eyes were filled with killing intent. His right hand suddenly arched into the shape of a dragon's claw. Each of his fingertips gushed out a single color of chi. 5 chi quickly gathered in his palm. Accompanied by a dragon's roar, the 5 elements of killing intent rose against the sky. "Uh-huh. I thought you had a lot of confidence. It turns out that you're just a weakling in the early stage of the nascent soul stage. A mere firefly dares to compete with the sun and the moon?" The bearded man saw this and suddenly laughed. Before, when Yi hid his strength, he was more or less uncertain. But now that he saw the details of Yi, he suddenly had no more scruples. The strength of the early stage of a nascent soul stage could not be considered weak, but it also depended on who he was compared with. In a small place, he was naturally a master who could dominate a small area, but in front of a profound Ascension Realm cultivator, he was at most a fart. The difference between them was almost a whole realm. Such a disparity in strength had already determined the outcome. What made him feel even more ridiculous was that his opponent clearly knew that there was a huge disparity in strength, but he still didn't think of taking the opportunity to escape. Instead, he stubbornly braced himself and fought him head-on. His brain was simply too stupid to be saved. The bearded man couldn't help but laugh wildly when he saw this. People with sharp tongues generally did not have great wisdom. These words were really not false. Of course, in his opinion, even if the other party chose to escape, he was stupid. His ghost-eyed golden eagle speed was far above the other party's trash spirit bird. How could he escape? Die in peace, 10,000 rods shattering. The curly-bearded man let out an explosive roar that shook the heavens. In an instant, the black rod shadows that had blotted out the sky and covered the earth converged into one, transforming into a solid killing heaven rod that smashed down. Every rod shadow had the power of 1,000 pounds, and this killing heaven rod that had condensed countless rod shadows, its power was more than 10 million pounds. Oh, keep that to yourself. Lin, he smiled slightly. Although he was enveloped by the 10,000 rod smash, his expression remained unchanged. Although his opponent's martial technique was powerful, he did not believe that the 5 elements killing chi he had comprehended from the 5 poison flood dragon would lose. As he spoke, the heaven-defying 5 elements killing intent had already transformed into a flood dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It met the opponent's heaven-reaching staff head-on. In an instant, the surrounding area of 1,000 miles was filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls, and the weather changed color. You think you can block my 10,000 cudgel smash just by creating a dragon? What a joke. The curly-bearded man was about to use this last opportunity to ridicule him. However, before he finished speaking, the scene in front of him made his expression freeze. It was very different from what he expected. The dragon formed by the killing intent of the 5 elements was not smashed by the rod. Instead, before the power of the sky-shattering rod was raised to the extreme, it actually followed the rod, dragon coiling pillar, and an even more exaggerated scene was yet to come. After the killing intent of the 5 elements entangled the sky-shattering rod, the 5-color divine light on its body flowed rapidly. The insufferably arrogant sky-shattering rod actually fell apart in the blink of an eye. It was crushed by it. The bearded man was so scared that his tongue was hanging out. Sky-shattering rod was a powerful martial skill of his. Just now, because he attacked in anger, he did not hold back at all, nor did he underestimate the enemy. A profound ascending early stage used all his strength to deal with a mere peak early nascent soul stage. How could this be the result? Even if you beat him to death, he could not figure out why this was happening. In fact, he was indeed going to die. After the 5 elements killing chi crushed the Tong Tian terminus rod, it did not dissipate into thin air. Instead, it directly found him, the main master. The curly-bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle under him could be said to be unprepared for this. Without any suspense, they were both penetrated by the 5 elements killing chi, leaving a huge bloody hole in their chests. The killing intent of the 5 elements is indeed a rare and terrifying martial skill. This time I've really earned a lot. Watching the bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle fall straight into the sea, Lin, he couldn't help but be shocked. He did expect that the killing intent of the 5 elements could fight against a profound ascending stage master, but he never thought that it would be so easy, killing them on the spot. Lin E and the spirit bird stayed in the air for a while. After all, the other party was a profound ascending stage master. Although the bloody hole in his chest was a bit scary with his strong vitality, as long as he could get timely treatment, there was still a chance for him to survive. Okay, let's go. A profound ascending stage master came out to rob us. Why bother? Lin, he shook his head. When he saw the bearded man and the ghost-eyed golden eagle fall into the sea together, there was no need to continue watching, because the other party was definitely dead. As expected, at the same time Lin, E, and the spirit bird left, the curly bearded man and the golden-eyed eagle were immediately surrounded by a few sea beasts that followed the smell of blood. In the blink of an eye, they were completely devoured. This time, they really couldn't be more dead. Continuing to fly in the direction of the North Island, they would pass by the Middle Island on the way. If there were no accidents, they would arrive soon. Lin wanted to go to the Middle Island to take a look. After all, the Middle Island had the will of heaven, Kai Zhongyang, and Ho Guanqi, especially the two confidants, Tian Chan and Sydney. After so long, Lin missed them very much. However, after thinking about it carefully, Lin finally gave up the tempting idea of turning to the Middle Island. Unless he got the permission of the Middle Island Master Pavilion, flying spirit beasts could not fly over the Middle Island without authorization. If Lin wanted to enter the Middle Island, he would have to spend a lot of effort. What's more, he had been away from the North Island for too long, far beyond the deadline of the mission, and he couldn't send back a message on the way. Normal people would think that something had happened to him. He didn't know what happened to his little brothers, and there was also the King of Rags. All of this made Lin quite worried. He could only let go of the idea of Middle Island first. Anyway, the two women, Tian Chan and Sydney, were taken care of by the will of heaven and others. Nothing would happen to them. He could find a chance to see them in the future. Chapter 4592. After making up his mind, Lin became more and more eager to return, and the speed of the spirit bird unconsciously increased little by little. It was really scared by the ghost-eyed golden eagle just now. If it weren't for Lin Yi's powerful strength that killed the eagle, it and Lin would be the food of the sea beast at the moment. After all, with the speed of the eagle, it could easily catch up with it, so the spirit bird's only thought at this time was to fly faster and faster. Only when it was so fast that all the flying spirit beasts couldn't catch up with it, then it would be really safe. North Island, 3 pavilions. Since the emergence of the newcomer king, Ma Daiqiang, especially after he stood out among the heroes in the inner door competition, the 3 pavilions had been talking about this time. Almost everyone was talking about this unprecedented newcomer in the nascent soul stage. Due to the emergence of Lin, Yi, and Ma Daiqiang, the 2 newcomer kings, even the Clear Cloud Pavilion that had always been on the decline suddenly regained its former glory, looking like a salted fish that had turned over a new leaf. However, unexpectedly, the person in the limelight recently was not Ma Daiqiang of Blue Cloud Pavilion, but the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, Su Lingqiong, who had been silent for a long time. Since the last time he disappeared, this young master, Su, had changed from his usual arrogant and domineering attitude, becoming much more calm and reserved. This time, the reason why he became the focus of the conversation was not because he had done something eye-catching, but because he had succeeded in becoming the eldest senior brother of the outer court steward of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Of course, this news itself was not very eye-catching, and it couldn't even be regarded as news. After all, Su Lingqiong had been competing for this position for a long time, and he had made various preparations for this. It could be said that everyone knew his intentions. However, this time it still caused a great sensation, because Su Lingqiong broke through to the master of the nascent soul stage. When Su Lingqiong first started to build momentum for this, his strength was only at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. In less than a year, he actually crossed the entire gold core stage and became a master of the nascent soul stage. This kind of thing was simply shocking. Young Master Su's talent had been outstanding since he was young, and this had long been publicized to the world by those who were observant. But even so, it had never been boasted to such a shocking extent. Not to mention that others did not believe it. In fact, even Su Yuanzheng, his own grandfather, felt dazed and often could not help but wonder if he was dreaming. From the peak of the foundation establishment stage to the nascent soul stage, If it was a cultivator with average talent, they might not be able to succeed even after spending 100 years. Even those so-called elites would need at least 8 to 10 years. If someone said that he wanted to cross the entire gold core stage within a year, he would definitely be regarded as a madman. However, the ironclad truth was right in front of them. Even if they didn't want to believe it, they had to believe it. After a moment of disbelief, they could only use one sentence to express their feelings. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. Young Master Su was no ordinary genius, so there was nothing to be surprised about even if he didn't take the ordinary path with the strength of the nascent soul stage. Even if Su Lingqiang's deep background was not taken into account, it was still a humbling position. There was nothing to be surprised about, but apart from Su Lingqiang's sudden advancement to the nascent soul stage, there was another thing that shocked everyone. Ma Dongxiang, the newcomer king of Blue Cloud Pavilion, who was also a nascent soul stage expert, was in front of young Master Su Lingqiang. He actually considered himself as a little brother. This scene was really shocking. Although Su Lingqiang was also a nascent soul stage expert, this Ma Dongxiang was not weaker than him in terms of strength. In fact, he was even the limelight recently. Speaking of status and position, Chun Xiaobei was not the only one. Ma Dongxiang was now the second senior brother of Blue Cloud Pavilion's intersect steward. Even if Blue Cloud Pavilion was not as good as Soaring Sky Pavilion, the second senior brother of intersect steward's position should be much stronger than the eldest senior brother of outer sect steward, right? After thinking about it, there was only one explanation. That was, Ma Dongxiang had taken a fancy to young Master Su's deep background. The other party had a grandfather who was a big shot in the Elder Council. This was the only place that Ma Dongxiang could climb up to. However, this explanation was still very far-fetched. Don't forget that Ma Dongxiang was often compared to Lin Yi, and he himself seemed to attach great importance to it. Every single thing. Even if it was a small matter, he was determined to not be inferior to Lin Yi. But Lin Yi had never lowered his head to young Master Su before. On the contrary, it was young Master Su who repeatedly met with a rebuff. Why was Ma Dongxiang now willing to be young Master Su's little brother? If Ma Dongxiang only lowered his head to Su Lingqiang, even if the reason was a little far-fetched, everyone would feel that it was no big deal in the end. After all, everyone had their own ambitions. Back then, Lin Yi and Su Lingqiang didn't get along well. Maybe this Ma Dongxiang would hit it off with young Master Su. This wasn't impossible. But the problem was that Ma Dongxiang not only bowed and groveled in front of Su Lingqiang, the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion, but even in front of Meng Tong, Kong Mingming, and Zhong Pingliang, he had to flatter them from time to time. It seemed that he was clearly ranked at the bottom of the group. This was really incomprehensible. No matter what, he was a nascent soul stage master. If it was said that in order to curry favor with young Master Su, he even had to flatter Meng Tong and the others. Wasn't that too much of a bootlicker? Wasn't that too lacking in the dignity of a master? And what was unexpected was that Ma Dongxiang, who had always been very sensitive to the discussions in the streets, turned a deaf ear to everyone's one-sided negative comments this time. It gave people the feeling that he was prepared to go down the dark path and was determined to flatter Su Lingqiang and his group to the end. On this day, Su Lingqiang's group had once again gathered together. The bystanders were already used to this kind of scene. These people would gather once every 10 days. This group of people would mysteriously shut themselves up in a small house. No one knew what they were secretly discussing. In any case, everyone would keep their mouths shut when they came out of the small house. They would never announce to the bystanders what they were going to do, appearing to be unfathomable. Walking out of Su Lingqiang's mansion, Ma Dongxiang nodded and groveled as he watched Kong Mingming and the others leave. Only then did he return to Blue Cloud Pavilion alone. Although he was not the only Blue Cloud Pavilion disciple in the group, Meng Tong had always been inseparable from Su Lingqiang. They ate and lived together. Naturally, he wouldn't go to Blue Cloud Pavilion if there wasn't anything important. Returning to Blue Cloud Pavilion, Ma Dongxiang, who was previously bowing and groveling, immediately became arrogant. No matter who he met, He had a gloomy expression that made the group of Blue Cloud Pavilion disciples only dare to look at him from afar. Only when he was far away could they continue doing what they were supposed to do. Chapter 4593. Just as Ma Daoqiang was about to return to his residence number 1, he suddenly saw a familiar figure at the corner. He was stunned for a moment before he reacted and shouted at the figure, "Hey, the idiot called Lu Bianren in front. Stop right there." Lu Bianren was stunned. He had already seen this arrogant and despotic Ma Daoqiang, but he didn't want to get into trouble, so he deliberately avoided him. He didn't expect that he would still be stopped by this guy. Although Huang Xiaolong had the intention to ignore him, he didn't want to appear weak in front of this bastard. Not to mention, the other party had used such a humiliating method to call out his name in front of so many Clear Cloud Pavilion disciples. It was not right for him to run away like a turtle hiding in its shell. Turning around, Lu Bianren calmly looked at Ma Daoqiang. His face was as calm as an ancient well, without the slightest hint of joy or anger. Even the bystanders who had nothing to do with this couldn't help but sigh. This Lu Bianren was indeed a well-mannered gentleman. However, Ma Daoqiang saw Lu Bianren's performance as a coward. He curled his lips in disdain and said, "Where's that bullshit, Lenny? Did he come back? If he came back, tell him to come see me quickly." No. Lu Bianren's tone was still calm. He knew that, with his strength, he would only be at a disadvantage if he fought with Ma Daoqiang. Since he knew that he couldn't afford to provoke him, he shouldn't let his anger blind his mind. Otherwise, it would only ruin things. No. Damn it. Why hasn't he come back? How long has he been gone? Why hasn't he come back? Ma Daoqiang frowned and said in a sarcastic tone, "Oh, could it be that he knows that I'm going to find trouble with him? And he also knows that he's not strong enough? He's afraid of dying in my hands, so he's a coward and doesn't dare to come back? Ha ha!" Lu Bianren's expression changed slightly. It didn't matter how Ma Daoqiang ridiculed him. He could completely ignore it. However, he couldn't remain indifferent when Ma Daoqiang made fun of Lin Yi so unscrupulously in front of him. After all, Lin Yi wasn't only his friend, he also saved his life. Furthermore, she had saved his life. If he ignored her at this time, it would be unjust. He, Lu Bianren, could tolerate anything, but he could not tolerate inhumane and unjust things. Junior brother Lin is a publicly acknowledged genius disciple. Even the Soaring Sky Pavilion's Pavilion Master Shangwan is full of praise for him. Before you defeat him face to face, I advise you to think before you speak. Otherwise, you will not only be insulting junior brother Lin, but also Pavilion Master Shangwan. Lu Bianren's complexion sank. Oh, from the looks of it, his reverse scale had been stepped on. TSK. I thought a coward like you would never be able to stand up for his entire life. Ma Dafeng immediately became even more spirited. In a flash, he suddenly appeared in front of Lu Bianren and grabbed him by the neck. "You said I insulted Pavilion Master Shangwan? All right, then why don't you tell me how I insulted him? Insulting him for having poor judgment and mistaking a good-for-nothing for a genius? It would be fine if no one mentioned the matter of Shanghai Tianhua, but once someone brought it up, Ma Daoguang would definitely explode in anger, as if his scars had been exposed in front of him. He was also the radiant newcomer king of the inner sanctum. Shanghai Tianhua only thinks highly of that bullshit Lin Yi, but he disdains me, a new nascent soul stage cultivator who is stronger than him. This old man's brain must be flooded with water. Ma Daoqiang was already in a bad mood today, which was why he specifically called out to Lu Bianren. Actually, he just wanted to find fault with Lu Bianren to vent his anger. Now that Lu Bianren had poked at his scars, it would be strange if he didn't fly into a rage on the spot. Don't be fooled by the fact that his strength was superb and he seemed to be in the limelight recently. Actually, the situation of using a horse as a spear wasn't as glorious as what others imagined. Especially in front of Su Lingchong's group. It was called vexing and sullen. As the weakest person in the group, Yi Shiwen's expression changed drastically. Not only Su Lingchong, but also anyone else, he didn't dare to disobey. So he could only do as he was told. Especially this time, Su Lingqiang had assigned him an extremely fucked up mission. He had already accumulated a bellyful of anger, and coincidentally bumped into Lu Bianren at this time. He was simply a ready-made punching bag. Of course, although Ma Daoqiang seemed to act perverse, this time, in addition to finding fault with Lu Bianren to vent his anger, he actually had another important purpose, which was to complete the task that Su Lingqiang had just assigned to him. Every disciple had to do a trial task regularly after entering the inner sanctum. This time, Su Lingqiang's order to Ma Daoqiang was to take a trial task near the South Island and take this opportunity to inquire about the whereabouts of Lin Yi. When he received this order just now, Ma Daoqiang almost went crazy, but he tried hard not to lose his temper on the spot. Damn it! I gave up the super newcomer king and went all the way to the South Island to do a task. Isn't there something wrong with his brain? It was a pity that Ma Daoqiang was the super newcomer king surrounded by many stars in Blue Cloud Pavilion, but in front of Su Lingqiang and his gang, he was not even a fart. Not to mention losing his temper on the spot. Even if he just muttered behind his back, once it was known by others, he would die without a burial place immediately. Even if he had 100 guts, he would not dare to take this risk. Just to inquire about the whereabouts of Lin Yi, who had no idea whether he was dead or alive. He had to go all the way to the South Island to do a task in person. No one would be in a good mood for this kind of fucking thing, and they would curse no matter who it was. Su Lingqiang also knew that this was a bit too much, but he had no choice. Lin Yi had been too quiet these days, and even the mysterious man could not know his whereabouts. Therefore, this matter fell on Su Lingqiang's head. Obviously, Su Lingqiang would not bear this crime himself. Ma Daoqiang, who had just become the super newcomer king, was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate for the task. With a stomach full of anger that had nowhere to vent, Ma Daoqiang held Lu Bianren's neck with one hand. If there were not so many disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion pointing and whispering around, he even wanted to strangle Lu Bianren on the spot to vent his anger. Being held in the air by Ma Daoqiang with one hand by the neck, Lu Bianren was in a very embarrassing state at the moment. Because he was out of breath, his face had turned the color of a pig's liver. He struggled desperately, but he could not get rid of Ma Daoqiang's hand at all. He only felt that Ma Daoqiang's hand was as hard as iron. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not move at all. There was no other way. The gap between their strength was too wide, and Lu Bianren was caught off guard by Ma Daoqiang. Unless Ma Daoqiang took the initiative to let go, otherwise, if this stalemate continued, Lu Bianren would definitely suffocate to death even if his throat was not crushed. Judging from Ma Daoqiang's posture, Lu Bianren did not intend to let go at all. Chapter 4594. If he really killed Lu Bianren in public, it would definitely cause a great uproar. As the super newcomer king, Ma Daoqiang would have to pay a big price. However, he was so angry at this moment that how could he let Lu Bianren go so easily? Ma Daoqiang's idea was that he had to go to the South Island anyway, so it didn't matter if he killed Lu Bianren. He would just take it as going out to avoid the trouble. Say it. Why don't you dare to say it? Or do you also think that Pavilion Master Shangwan has eyes but fails to see, and that his old eyes were blind to pick a useless person? Ma Daoqiang choked Lu Bianren so hard that he even spat out his tongue. He knew that Ma Daoqiang couldn't say anything, but he felt a rare pleasure. He couldn't hold back his anger, so he had to vent it out. The disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion watched this scene from afar, and they couldn't help sweating for Lu Bianren, but no one dared to stand up. Lu Bianren had always been a good person, and they didn't mind helping him a little. But now they were facing a freak like Ma Daoqiang, who couldn't be judged by common sense. It was better to stay as far away from him as possible, so as not to get into trouble. Lu Bianren's heart was filled with grief, being strangled to death in the Clear Cloud Pavilion under the watchful eyes of so many people, and from the beginning to the end, not a single person dared to step forward to stop it. The hypocrisy and coldness of the world to such an extent really made him feel a chill in his heart, and all his hopes turned to dust. However, at this moment, a young girl's voice suddenly sounded, Who dares to say that my grandfather has eyes but cannot see? Along with the voice, a chubby, tall, scholarly, and cute little bear appeared in front of everyone, followed by its owner, Shanghai Laner. Greetings, Miss Shangwan. The group of Clear Cloud Pavilion disciples who were watching from the side were shocked, quickly cupping their fists in greeting. Although this young lady was the Soaring Sky Pavilion's little princess, even the Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord, Yu Zhenyang, had to be courteous to her, not to mention ordinary disciples like them. Seeing Shangwan Lan suddenly appear, the arrogant, despotic, and condescending Ma Daiqiang couldn't help but be startled. Don't be fooled by him saying that Shangwan Tianhua had eyes but couldn't see, as if he didn't place the Soaring Sky Pavilion master in his eyes at all. However, if these words were to reach the ears of the person in question, he would definitely be scared to the point of wetting his pants. The super rookie king of the nascent soul stage. Don't look at this gimmick that sounds really badass, but in front of Shangwan Tianhua, he was not even an ant. He didn't even need to move a finger. As long as he opened his golden mouth and called his name once, he wouldn't be able to survive the next day. He was well aware of this. Seeing that Shangwan Laner was looking at him with a cold expression, Ma Daoqiang's heart suddenly thumped. He had said those words purely because he was angry. Of course, if it was only heard by the disciples of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, it was impossible for these words to reach Shanghai Tianhua's ears. However, the problem was that these words were heard by Shangwan Laner. She was the granddaughter of Shangwan Tianhua. If she went back and spread these words, what would Shangwan Tianhua's reaction be? Thinking of this, Ma Daoqiang suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. He couldn't wait to slap his own mouth. This time, disaster really came from a loose tongue, who told him to forget to guard his mouth in a moment of happiness. For the second time, who said that my grandfather had eyes but failed to see. Quickly stand up for this young lady. I won't repeat the same words a third time. At that time, the one who will question you won't be me, but your pavilion lord you. Shangwan Laner continued to speak with a cold expression. Shangwan Tianhua was her only relative. She absolutely wouldn't allow anyone to disrespect her grandfather, not to mention slandering him in public. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ma Daoqiang. Ma Daoqiang's face suddenly turned blue and purple. He was almost as angry as Lu Bianren at the moment. Seeing Shangwan Laner staring at him with a murderous look, Ma Daoqiang knew that he couldn't avoid it. Ma Daoqiang knew that he couldn't avoid it, so he had to bite the bullet and said with an apologetic smile, Miss Shangwan, you may have misheard. Cabinet Master Shangwan is wise and brilliant, and that's something that everyone in the North Island is talking about. Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall is a ready-made example. Who would say that Cabinet Master Shangwan is blind? Isn't that lying with his eyes open? Unless his brain was kicked by a donkey. Is that so? Shangwan Laner glanced at him, then turned to the crowd and said, Did he say that just now? Why doesn't it sound like it? Seeing this, the disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion looked at Ma Daoqiang hesitantly. Seeing that this guy was staring at them fiercely and threatening them with a gesture of slitting his neck, they immediately shrank their necks and shook their heads weakly, saying, I didn't hear it clearly. Although they were afraid of Shangwan Laner, they were more afraid of Ma Daoqiang. After all, no matter how distinguished Shanghai Laner's status was, she was still a member of Rising Sky Pavilion. She wouldn't have anything to do with them. However, Ma Daoqiang was the second senior brother of Inner Course Supervisor of Blue Cloud Pavilion. If they dared to tell the truth at this time, even if Ma Daoqiang was unlucky, he would definitely take revenge on them before he was unlucky. They couldn't afford to take such a big risk. Didn't hear it clearly? There are so many of you. Didn't any of you hear it clearly? Looking at the disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, cowering in fear, Shanghai Laner suddenly became angry. Then she rolled her eyes and suddenly pointed at Lu Bianren, saying, You are the closest to this guy. You speak. At this moment, Lu Bianren was still being held in Ma Daoqiang's hand. At this time, he was on the verge of fainting and couldn't move at all. When Ma Daoqiang heard Shanghai Laner's words, he immediately tightened his grip. He was afraid that Lu Bianren would say something unfavorable to him, so he immediately wanted to silence him. At the same time, it was also a bloody warning to everyone present. Why haven't you put him down yet? I will say the ugly words first. If he does anything wrong, you will silence him, Shanghai Laner said with a cold face. At the same time, the little curly bear under her feet had already rushed over and climbed onto Ma Daoqiang's body. After that, the little curly bear bit down on Lu Bianren's hand. Ah! Ma Daoqiang cried out in pain. Under the pain, he loosened his grip and threw Lu Bianren to the side. Although the little curly bear's strength wasn't high, it seemed like a cute pet. However, this was only a deceptive appearance. The powerful destructive power of the curly bear clan was definitely first class among all the spiritual beasts. Although the little curly bear was far from being mature, it was born with a pair of good teeth. It could even chew spiritual jades into pieces. Although Ma Daoqiang was an original infant stage expert, he was still made of flesh and blood. Of course, he couldn't withstand the little curly bear's bite. With this, Lu Bianren, who had been suffocating for a long time, was finally able to escape from death. His body was in a sorry state as he lay on the side, gasping for breath. Chapter 4595. Seeing this, Ma Dongxiang immediately gnashed his teeth in hatred. He subconsciously wanted to kill this annoying little curly bear, but the next moment he reacted and quickly withdrew his hand. This was Shangwan Laner's flesh and blood. Not to mention killing the little curly bear. Even if Ma Dongxiang was only able to hurt half a hair of the little curly bear, he would not rest until he was dead. He really could not afford to provoke him. Being stared at by Shangwan Laner, Ma Dongxiang could only stand at the side and watch hatefully. Previously, when Lu Bianren was pinched in his hand, he still had a chance to quietly kill him. But now, it was definitely impossible. Damn it, this coward escaped from his calamity. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lu Bianren panted for a long time without caring about his image. His breath barely returned to normal. He slowly stood up and tidied up his messy clothes. He bowed deeply to Shangwan Lan, and said, "Thank you for saving my life, Miss Shangwan. I will never forget it. It was nothing. You don't need to take it to heart. Let's talk about what happened just now. Did this guy say that my grandfather has eyes but cannot see?" Shangwan Laner faintly smiled. Although she was very close to Lin Yi, she had never had any dealings with Lu Bianren. She had only seen him from afar a few times. This time, she happened to encounter this matter, which could be considered as Lu Bianren's good fortune. Otherwise, it would be hard to predict whether he would live or die today. Hearing this, Lu Bianren looked at Ma Dongxiang, who had a fierce expression on his face, and then looked at the surrounding disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion who did not dare to make sound. At this moment, Lu Bianren's heart was filled with disappointment. The disciples of the sect were all cowardly trash. They did not even have the bearing of an ordinary person. Who could be blamed for Blue Cloud Pavilion falling into such an embarrassing situation today? I'm warning you, don't speak nonsense. Otherwise, I will look for you and have a heart-to-heart talk. Ma Dongxiang threatened indifferently. If he said he would do it, if Lu Bianren really dared to testify against him, he would not mind taking another life tonight. Facing such an undisguised threat, Lu Bianren looked at him calmly and did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He slowly said, replying to Miss Shangwan, "Yes." "You." Ma Dongxiang was so angry that he could not help but want to attack again. He had seen many cowards with no strength, but someone like Lu Bianren who was not afraid of death. This was the first time he had seen. "Good, very good. This is the first time in my life that I've heard someone say that my grandfather has eyes but cannot see. You've really opened my eyes." These words really need to be heard by the old man himself. This time, she was really angry. She coldly snorted and stared at Ma Dan like a spear and said, "Speak. What's your name?" "No, it's not like that. Miss Shangwan, please listen to my explanation. This guy is holding a grudge and speaking without thinking. Pavilion Master Shangwan has always been the person I respect the most. Why would I speak ill of him behind his back?" My sincerity can be witnessed by the sun and the moon. Miss Shangwan, you must not be deceived by this vile person. Ma Daofeng quickly pretended to be greatly wronged. His name is Ma Daoqiang, Lu Bianren said indifferently. Horse's spear. Shangwan Laner thought for a long time, but could not remember what this plaything was. Ever since Linny left, she rarely came out to play. Basically, she only heard some news from the outside world from Shanghai Tianhua. Ma Daoqiang, this so-called super newcomer king, she really had never heard of him. Ma Daoqiang originally wanted to defend himself, but when he saw Shanghai Laner's confused expression, his self-esteem immediately suffered a heavy blow. His pride took a heavy blow. It was one thing for Shangwan Tianhua to look down on him, the rookie king, but now, even Shangwan Laner looked at him with disdain, as if she had just heard a nameless nobody. This was too much. This could not be tolerated. The biggest blow to those who thought they were infallible was not to belittle them, nor was it to insult them, but to ignore them. He was once just an unknown nobody. From a day he soared to the sky and became a nascent soul stage expert, Ma Daoqiang vowed to let everyone know his name. In Shanghai Tianhua and Shanghai Laner, this pair of grandfather and granddaughter unknowingly broke his heart into pieces. Yes, I am Ma Daoqiang. If Miss Shangwan is not too ignorant and inexperienced, you should know that recently, Blue Cloud Pavilion has a nascent soul stage super newcomer king. Ma Daoqiang suddenly changed his mind. He changed from his previous flattering smile to flatter Shanghai Laner to an overbearing manner. I have never heard of him. Shanghai Laner carefully looked at him and finally told the truth. When Ma Daoqiang heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched again. He suppressed his anger and said, "Well, then Miss Shangwan has heard of it now, right? I might as well tell you the truth. Pavilion Master Shangwan has eyes, but cannot see." These words were indeed said by me. Not only did I say so, but I also want to prove this point. I want all of you to see who is the real super genius between me and that bullshit Lin Yi. You want to compete with junior brother Lin? Shanghai Laner couldn't help but reveal a look of disbelief. In her mind, Lin Yi was an invincible existence among the disciples of the three pavilions. At that time, Shanghai Tianhua's attitude was a clear proof. She didn't expect to meet someone who refused to admit defeat today. No wonder this guy dared to say that her grandfather had eyes, but could not see. How do you want to prove it? Lu Bianren grasped the main point of the other party's words. Ma Daoqiang suddenly said these words, indicating that he must have a plan. It's very simple. Don't you think I can't compare with that bullshit Linny? Well, then I'll find a trial mission to go to the South Island and personally cripple him and bring him back. Let's see what you have to say then. After saying that, Ma Daoqiang immediately left with a cold snort. He was taking advantage of the situation. Anyway, since Su Lingqiong had assigned him the task, he must go to the South Island to find Lin Yi. If he did not find a suitable reason to run errands for no reason, he would definitely be looked down upon by others and even be suspected by people with ulterior motives. Now, he happened to encounter such a situation where he could not back down, so he could kill two birds with one stone by saying in public. Not only did he have a good reason to go to the South Island, but he could also explain to Shanghai Tianhua. At least before the result of the battle between Ma Daoqiang and Lin Yi came out, the pavilion master of Rising Sky Pavilion couldn't blame him. Otherwise, it would be a performance of guilt, and then he would be known as a person who had eyes but could not see. If he successfully disabled Lin Yi, then Shanghai Tianhua couldn't do anything to him. This response was simply perfect. If he hadn't been watched by so many people, Ma Daoqiang couldn't help but applaud for his quick wit. It was so fucking witty. Looking at Ma Daoqiang's arrogant back, Shanghai Laner stuck out her tongue in disdain, but Lu Bianren was worried. If Lin Yi was really met by this guy, it would bode ill rather than well. After all, the opponent was a master in the nascent soul stage. Chapter 4596. Others didn't know, but when Lu Bianren and Lin Yi parted ways in Devilung City, he was very clear that Lin Yi was only an expert in the middle stage of Gold Core. Although he was already incredibly strong compared to the disciples of the other three pavilions, he was still a lot weaker than Ma Daoqiang, the new king of the nascent soul stage. It was normal for people like Lin Yi to fight an opponent of a higher level, but it was still impossible for him to fight an opponent of a higher level. If you have read this chapter, please move to / or directly search for, or on Baidu. Please remember our new website address. I've been fooled by this guy. He's really cunning. Shanghai Laner was stunned for a moment, and suddenly said angrily, Ma Daoqiang, this bastard dared to slander her grandfather in public. She had planned to make this guy pay a good price just now, but he only said a few words and then walked away unscathed. It was really infuriating. Miss Shangwan, Ma Daoqiang looks arrogant and domineering, but he is actually not a stupid person. What's more, after what he said, even if it's for the sake of Pavilion Master Shangwan's reputation, you can't deal with him. Lu Bianren sighed at the side. I know. That's why I said he's cunning and let him escape. Otherwise, I would have caught him and severely punished him. Shanghai Laner shrugged helplessly and said angrily. This was Lin Yi's habitual action, and she had unknowingly learned it since she got close to Lin Yi. Lu Bianren smiled and did not speak. He was almost strangled to death by Ma Daoqiang just now. If there was anyone present who hated Ma Daoqiang the most, it would definitely be him, but at this moment, he acted as if nothing had happened. Since he couldn't do anything to him for the time being, it was useless to be angry. It was better to put the hatred behind him first. A gentleman's revenge was never too late. By the way, do you have any news about Junior Brother? Shanghai Laner stomped her feet angrily for a while, and then suddenly changed the topic. The reason why she came here today was to ask about this matter. Lin Yi had been gone for more than a year, and there was no news from the beginning to the end. As a little senior sister, her worry was no less than anyone else's. Not yet. The last time I knew of Junior Brother Lin's whereabouts was during the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. He was being chased by an evil cultivator called the West Mountain Old Sect. It said that he's from the West Mountain Evil Sect's mountain opening period. After that, there's no more news about him. Lu Bianren sighed. Even you didn't receive his message? Sigh, little Junior Brother is really something. He doesn't know how to think about us who care about him. Shangwan Laner couldn't help but shake her head in disappointment. But even though he said that, at this moment, there was a trace of joy in her heart. If Lin Yi only brought a letter to Lu Bianren and the others, but not to her, didn't that mean that her position in Lin Yi's heart was lower than that of Lu Bianren and the others? Shangwan Laner had always regarded Lin Yi as her best friend in the three great pavilions. If that was really the case, then she would be very sad. Miss Shangwan, Junior Brother Lin can't be blamed for this. In fact, it's not that he doesn't want to send a message to us. It's just that the southern continent is a long way away, and it's not easy to find someone to deliver a message. Moreover, there's a powerful evil cultivator like the West Mountain sect behind him. Even if there's a chance, he can't find someone to send a message, or his whereabouts might be exposed. Lu Bianren analyzed. Oh, that's true. Then I'll go back first. Since there was no news of Lin Yi, Shangwan Laner naturally wouldn't stay in Blue Cloud Pavilion. After saying goodbye, she immediately turned around and left with the little curly bear. But before she left, she suddenly turned back and added, If you have news of little Junior Brother, you must tell me immediately. Okay, Miss Shangwan, take care. Lu Bianren nodded and looked at the bouncing back of Shangwan Laner with a smile. He couldn't help but have an inexplicable thought. This soaring sky pavilion princess and Junior Brother Lin were really a good match. Presumably, Pavilion Master Shangwan would also be happy to see this kind of thing happen. After standing in place for a while, Lu Bianren suddenly came to his senses and hurriedly left, threatening to go to the southern continent to teach Lin Yi a lesson. This matter didn't seem to be just words. He had to quickly tell this news to everyone and gather them together to discuss countermeasures. After returning to Hualan residence, the first thing Shangwan Laner did was to rush into the study. She grabbed Shanghai Tianhua's pen and said solemnly, Grandpa, you're still in the mood to write? Something big has happened. What happened? Even you, little Lon, are in such a hurry? Shanghai Laner chuckled as she glanced sideways at herself, who had completed 90% of the ancient tablet inscription. The corner of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. This was a birthday gift that he had specially prepared for a certain big shot in the Eastern continent. For this, he had specially taken out the ancient tablet inscription that he had collected for many years and was widely believed to be extinct in the outside world. Of course, the ancient tablet inscription could not be given away, so Shanghai Tianhua decided to personally copy it. After all, he was one of the few calligraphers in the entire 5 major islands of the heavenly stage. Any of his calligraphy could be sold at a sky-high price. This gift would be very sincere no matter who he gave it to. After spending a whole 10 days, Shanghai Tianhua finally managed to copy 90% of the ancient tablet inscription. Now that he was about to finish, the brush was snatched away by Shanghai Laner, leaving a long ink mark on it. The previous 10 days of painstaking effort had been wasted in an instant. If it was someone else, they would have burst into tears. However, Shanghai Tianhua just chuckled. If it was destroyed, then so be it. At most, it would take some time to copy it again. Anyway, it was still early. Moreover, in his eyes, no matter what happened, it was not as important as his granddaughter. Someone slandered you in public, saying that Grandpa has eyes but fails to see. Isn't this a big deal? Shanghai Laner snorted angrily, saying that I have eyes but fails to see. Shanghai Tianhua was stunned for a moment. Then he shook his head with a smile and said, "This can't be considered slandering. After all, Grandpa is old. Sometimes, it's normal for me to be dim-sighted. It's not a big deal." "It's not a big deal? Grandpa, you are the pavilion master of the soaring pavilion. Saying that you have eyes but fails to see, doesn't that mean that you are not qualified to lead the soaring pavilion? This is a big deal. Grandpa, please be serious," Shanghai Laner said with a taut face. Old age and dim-sighted were normal words for ordinary people, but for cultivators, it was absolutely a joke. It was more appropriate to say that they were old and cunning, especially a super expert like Shanghai Tianhua. If even he was dim-sighted, then it was estimated that everyone on this heavenly island was blind. Good. Little Lon, tell me, what should Grandpa do? Shanghai Tianhua looked at his angry granddaughter and said with a smile, "Of course, punish him. Otherwise, anyone can casually slander you in the future. 1,000-mile dike can be destroyed by an ant's nest. That will cause trouble. The prestige of the pavilion master cannot be violated. We must make an example out of him," Shanghai Laner said methodically. To be continued. 118. Chapter 4597. After all, Shanghai Laner had been educated in this aspect since she was a child. Although she usually looked naive and carefree, when it came to this kind of thing, she had a set of methods. "Oh, then who should I punish, Grandfather?" Shanghai Tianhua laughed noncommittally. Shanghai Laner's words were not without reason. As the Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, he had always been known for his strength. If he said that he had eyes but failed to see some big shot, then Shanghai Tianhua might really make a move. However, since there was no news of it reaching his ears, it meant that it was definitely not one of those big shots. Naturally, he didn't need to take it to heart. Horse is a spear. It's that Blue Cloud Pavilion disciple who claims to be the super newcomer king. He slandered you in public, so he should be punished, Shanghai Laner said with conviction. Horse is a spear. Shanghai Tianhua thought for a moment and remembered that there was indeed such a person. He couldn't help but ask, could it be that nascent soul stage newcomer? Yes, this person is very arrogant and despotic. Today, in front of many disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion, he almost strangled senior brother Liu Bienren of Blue Cloud Pavilion to death. Fortunately, I met him. Grandfather, don't you think this person is hateful? Shanghai Laner complained. There is such a thing? Could it be that the other disciples of Blue Cloud Pavilion didn't save him? Shanghai Tianhua was slightly taken aback, but when he saw Shanghai Lana nod in affirmation, he couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. This Yu Jinyang He does have some ability, but unfortunately, he doesn't care about the Clear Cloud Pavilion's matters at all. All his disciples are like this. It will be difficult for the Clear Cloud Pavilion to rise again under his leadership. Yes, not only that, but he also threatened that you have eyes but fail to see. You mistook Junior Brother, a waste, for a genius. He also said that in order to prove this, he would personally go to South Island to destroy Junior Brother. It's really infuriating. Shanghai Laner said angrily with her hands on her hips. Whether it was Shanghai Tianhua or Lin Yi, they were the people she cared about the most. Now that the horse as a spear had trampled on both of them, it would be strange if Shanghai Laner didn't explode with anger. Oh, in that case, although this person is ostentatious, he's not completely brainless. He has made a shield for himself. Shanghai Tianhua said with a smile. It's just a little trick. What kind of shield is it? Grandpa, you're not going to pursue it, are you? Shanghai Laner said with a frown. Hee, since he has said so, it's not appropriate for me to pursue it even if I want to. This has become a matter between him and Lin Yi. It's not convenient for me to express my opinion before the result is out. Shanghai Tianhua smiled and shook his head. Doesn't that mean that his plot has succeeded? Grandpa, you're too tolerant of this horse as a spear, aren't you? Shanghai Laner suddenly paused and looked at Shanghai Tianhua up and down suspiciously. She said, Grandpa, don't tell me you've taken a fancy to this horse as a spear again. Do you think he's also a genius? Looking at Shanghai Tianhua's expression, Shanghai Laner suddenly felt that she had made a mistake. She should have thought that with her grandfather's temperament, he wouldn't pursue this kind of small character at all. She complained like this, but instead, she let the horse as a spear into her grandfather's eyes. Maybe this was the other party's real intention. No, he's not. Shanghai Tianhua chuckled. He's not. Shanghai Laner was immersed in annoyance. When she heard this, she was stunned and said strangely, Isn't he the super newcomer king? And he's also a master of the nascent soul stage. It sounds like he's even more powerful than little Junior Brother. Shanghai Laner was really unhappy to see the horse as a spear, but she had to say it. From the point of view of the heart conditions, this so-called super newcomer king wasn't bragging, but he really had the capital. Even if Lin Yi were to compare with him, it would be difficult for him to gain the slightest advantage. He might even suffer a loss. This horse as a spear is indeed the super newcomer king, and it's also true that he's a master of the nascent soul stage, but this doesn't mean that he's a real genius. Shanghai Tianhua shook his head and said with a smile, The reason why he can become the newcomer king is because of the absolute suppression of the strength of the nascent soul stage. That's because of the absolute suppression of the nascent soul stage's strength. The opponents he encountered in the Inner Sanctum tournament were all Golden Core stage disciples. Of course, no one could stop his footsteps. But little honor, think about it. What if his opponent was also a nascent soul stage expert? What other absolute advantages does he have? Oh yes, I understand. The reason why little Junior Brother is a super genius is that he can easily fight against enemies of a higher level. But this horse, as a spear, can't. Shanghai Laner suddenly patted her head and said excitedly, Yes, this is the gap in potential, which is much bigger than the gap in strength. Shanghai Tianhua nodded. He had never really observed the horse as a spear, or even seen it before, but he could conclude that this child certainly couldn't fight against enemies of a higher level like Lin Yi. The reason was very simple. A master of the nascent soul stage who could fight against enemies of a higher level would never put a master of the golden core stage in his eyes, let alone try to deal with a master of the golden core stage, because he must always look up. Only then could he become stronger. Otherwise, it was impossible to fight against enemies of a higher level. As the old saying goes, the bigger the stage is, the bigger the stage is. Hee. I said, how can this annoying guy be compared with little Junior Brother? This kind of person isn't even worthy of carrying shoes for little Junior Brother. Shanghai Laner was finally happy. She might doubt it if someone else said it, but it was her grandfather who said it, which meant it was true. Although it sounds biased, it is true. Strength itself doesn't mean anything. let alone a master of the nascent soul stage. Even if he is a master of the profound ascending stage, he is just an ant in my eyes, and there is no need to pay attention to him. But Lin Yi is different. His future potential is not as simple as being in the profound ascending stage. Shanghai Tianhua nodded. I see. But in this case, why don't you interfere, Grandpa? It's good that little junior brother has great potential, but now he is only in the golden core stage. If he is found by this horse as a spear, it will be very dangerous. It is rare for you to value a person so much. You can't let him be killed by this kind of trash. Shanghai Laner held Shanghai Tianhua's arm and said coquettishly, It doesn't matter whether this horse as a spear goes to the South Island or not. It has no effect on Lin Yi. Shanghai Tianhua smiled faintly. No effect? How can it be? Shanghai Laner was confused. Although she didn't like the horse as a spear from the bottom of her heart, and felt that this person didn't deserve to be compared with Lin Yi, he was still a master of the nascent soul stage. With Lin Yi's current strength, it would still be a headache to meet him, right? Chapter 4598. If he can successfully escape this disaster, then what can he do even if he acts as a spear? Even the opening mountain stage, evil cultivators can't stop Lin Yi, but he, a mere nascent soul stage, can stop him? Shanghai Tianhua smiled indifferently. And if Lin Yi can't escape the pursuit of Shishan Elder, then whether he acts as a spear or not, it will be meaningless. So that's how it is. Shanghai Lainu understood what he meant. After being stunned for a moment, she suddenly said, Grandpa, how do you know this? I especially went to ask Lu Bienren today to know. Oh, I understand. Grandpa, you have been asking people to inquire about the news of little junior brother, right? Why didn't you tell me? It's meaningless to tell you. In addition to letting you worry about him in vain, what else can it do? Shanghai Tianhua smiled and actually acquiesced to the matter of asking people to inquire about Lin Yi's news. You still have to tell me as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will be more worried if there is no news at all. Shanghai Laner pouted and complained. Okay. Next time I receive news related to Lin Yi, I will tell you, okay? Shanghai Tianhua had no resistance to his granddaughter's coquettish offensive, so he had to comply with it with a bitter smile. Hee, that's more like it. Shanghai Laner nodded with satisfaction. I say, little Laner, since you know that Lin Yi is being chased by Shishan Elder, aren't you worried at all? That is a master of the opening mountain stage. A giant evil cultivator who can make Lin Yi's corpse disappear with a casual move of his finger. Shanghai Tianhua looked at Shanghai Laner's reaction and couldn't help but feel a little strange. This little girl is obviously worried that Lin Yi will be used as a spear to retaliate, but it seems that she is not worried about Shishan Elder at all. What logic is this? The disciples of the other three pavilions may not have a concept of the giant of the opening mountain stage, but Shanghai Laner will definitely not. This kind of transcendental level that ordinary people can't even hear about is the minimum common sense in their Shangwan family. It has been taught as early as when they were young. I'm worried. However, I have always been praying for him, so I believe that he definitely won't die in the hands of an evil cultivator. Shangwan Laner giggled, and then immediately skipped away with the little curly bear. As expected, girls are attracted to their husbands. The old saying is true. Shangwan Tianhua laughed and shook his head. Shangwan Laner had always prayed for her father. She didn't even know whether her grandfather, whom she depended on for survival, was on the list. He didn't expect that this little girl would put Lin Yi on it first. Shanghai Tianhua was lost in thought for a moment. He inadvertently glanced at the inscription on the tablet that he had copied. At that time, it would be too much of a loss if someone died. After all, Jia Mufan or Shangwan Laner would not always be there to help them out. But the South Island is so big. Looking for a person is like looking for a needle in a haystack. How can we find him? Senior brother Qiao Qiao was at a loss and spread out his hands. Don't worry about this. After all, I've been to the South Island, and I know something about it. Besides, I also know an acquaintance of junior brother Lin there. I believe we can get some clues from him, and he won't be a headless fly running around everywhere. The acquaintance Lu Bienren referred to as naturally Chi Wenhan. It was Chi Wenhan who helped him get out of the South Island successfully. That's great. There's no time to lose. Let's choose a time to go. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up, and they were all eager to have a try. Since an acquaintance had clues, there was no need to hesitate. Chapter 4599. Then who will go and who will stay? Everyone looked at each other. From the bottom of their hearts, they all wanted to go, but what Lu Bienren said made sense. If all of them went, it would only do more harm than good. After all, they were going to look for someone, not to fight a war. Numbers were useless. I definitely have to go, Lu Bienren said first. He was the only one among them who had been to the South Continent Sea area, and only he knew Chi Wenhan, so there was no doubt about it. I definitely have to go. I came up with this idea, and I will fight anyone who tries to stop me. Xiao Honkai quickly raised her hand and said, Then I have to go. Junior brother Lin has taken care of me the most. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I don't go, am I still a human? Senior brother Bitter said immediately. Boss Lin, and I came up from the secular world together. We have known each other for the longest time, and our friendship is the deepest. If I don't go, it will be even more unreasonable. Xiao Ran also said. As soon as Xiao Ran's voice faded, everyone's eyes focused on Li Jingming. He was the only one left, and he had to be the one to stay behind. Unexpectedly, this guy said slowly, Boss Lin gave me my life. Don't expect me to stay. None of the 5 people was willing to stay, and each of them had a good reason. Everyone looked at each other. What should they do? They couldn't draw lots, could they? Not to mention that this method was not feasible. The point was that no one would agree. What if they were chosen to stay? After a moment of silence, Lu Bienren finally made the decision. After all, he was the most senior and the most powerful one among them. Besides, he was highly trusted and could be regarded as a man of virtue and prestige. His words carried enormous weight. Well, Junior Brother Ku and Junior Brother Xiao, you two stay here to guard. I, Honkai, and Zhongming will go to the South Island. Why? Senior Brother Bitter and Xiao Ran frowned at the same time. Xiao Honkai and Li Zhongming were happy, but why should they stay? The reason is simple. One of you is the 3rd pavilion master of the Welcoming Pavilion, and the other is the 2nd senior brother of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's outer court manager. Both of you hold important positions, Lu Bienren explained to the two with a bitter smile. What was especially worth mentioning was that Xiao Ran had suddenly jumped from the position of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Senior Disciple Supervisor to the position of the 2nd Senior Disciple Supervisor of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Outer Court Supervisor a month ago. This was a huge promotion. The difference in status and authority between the two was huge. Although the 2nd Senior Disciple Supervisor of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Outer Court Supervisor's authority was not particularly great, this kind of opportunity was absolutely enviable to others. One must know that even those 2nd-generation cultivators would have to pay a hefty price to operate this position. In particular, Xiao Ran had only joined the Blue Cloud Pavilion for 3 years. Even if he had been the Senior Disciple Supervisor for a year, it was still difficult to put his qualifications on the table. In fact, when this appointment was first proposed, it caused a huge controversy. 80% of the Blue Cloud Pavilion elders slammed the table because this was a gold-plated position specially prepared for them. How could they inexplicably give it to an outsider? And an outsider with no foundation at all. The person who previously occupied this position was Lu Bienren. However, after Lu Bienren disappeared for a long time, this position was automatically vacated. Even after Lu Bienren returned, this position was automatically vacated. Even after Lu Bienren returned, he did not continue to hold it. The official reason was because he was already a Golden Core disciple and automatically entered the Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner court. However, in fact, several Blue Cloud Pavilion elders were already secretly competing for this position, and some of them even fought until their heads were bleeding. In this kind of situation, Xiao Ran suddenly appeared. Wasn't this a slap to their faces? Was this a joke? However, in the end, this strange appointment was passed without any suspense. This was because the person who proposed this was the senior disciple supervisor of the Blue Cloud Pavilion's inner court, Jiamu Fan. More importantly, the pavilion master of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Yu Jinyang, approved it in public. Even if the Blue Cloud Pavilion elders were unwilling, they still did not dare to oppose Yu Jinyang for such a small matter. Even if they were unwilling, they did not dare to oppose Yu Jinyang for such a small matter. No matter what, Yu Jinyang was still the Clear Cloud Pavilion's pavilion lord. Don't be fooled by the fact that in front of characters like Shanghua and Tianhua, Yu Jinyang had always put on a harmless and kind face. But if it was one of the Clear Cloud Pavilion's elders, this fellow would never show mercy. After all, this was a powerful existence who had walked out from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. No one knew what Yu Jinyang was thinking, and no one knew what Jiamu Fan was thinking either. Anyway, the result was that Xiao Ran suddenly became the second senior disciple supervisor of the outer court of the Blue Cloud Pavilion. From then on, he officially entered the eyes of the senior management of the Blue Cloud Pavilion and took a solid step toward a position of real power. So what? Senior Brother Liu, you were the second senior disciple supervisor of the outer court before, but didn't you still go to the South Island? Senior Brother Ku and Xiao Ran asked almost at the same time. Chapter 4600. When they arrived at the Cultivators Guild in the North Island, the hall was as crowded as ever. When they were about to look for tasks related to the South Island, a weird voice suddenly came from behind. Yo, enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. I didn't expect to meet you in this place. Liu Bianren, do you think it's my luck or your misfortune? Hearing this voice, everyone was startled and quickly turned around to look behind them. Ma Daoqiang was swaggering in front of the door with his arms swinging in the air, and behind him were two flattering lackeys. Both of them were Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciples. The people around immediately talked about it. Ma Daoqiang was now a household name in the North Island. Those who didn't know him were too embarrassed to go out. No matter where he went, he was the absolute focus. You want to fight again? Liu Bianren's face darkened. Although he was gentle, he couldn't help getting angry at the thought of what happened last time. He said coldly, "This is a public place. If you are sure you can bear the consequences, we will fight you to the end." While Liu Bianren was talking, Xiao Hongkai and others were eager to have try. Although they knew they were no match for him, since they met on a narrow road, there was no reason for them to run away in embarrassment. As a man, the worst thing was to die. What was there to be afraid of? What's more, they were still trying to get revenge for what happened last time. You're pretty tough, aren't you? Ma Daoqiang sneered and raised his eyelids. The killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he finally restrained it and said carelessly, "Forget it. I'm not in the mood today. I'll spare your lives, but it's hard to say next time. So I advise you to stay away and live a long life if you know what's good for you." What he said was beautiful, but in fact, Ma Daoqiang wasn't so kind. The reason why he didn't fight like last time was that there were too many people here and he was afraid. After all, among them, there was not only Gu Yu, the third pavilion master of Welcome Pavilion. Moreover, there was also Xiao Ran, the newly promoted second senior brother of Blue Cloud Pavilion's outer gate supervisor. If he killed them in public, it would definitely be a big event that would cause a sensation in the North Island. No matter how much the higher-ups of Blue Cloud Pavilion thought highly of him, they didn't dare to speak up for him. Same here, Liu Bianren said coldly as he stopped Xiao Hongkai and the others who were about to attack. He lowered his voice and said, "Hurry up and find the missions to go to the South Island. Take all the available ones. Don't let this bastard get ahead of you." Everyone was shocked. Only then did they react, and they quickly split up to search. Ma Daoqiang must have come here with the same intention. The words he said before were not just empty words. They must not let him get ahead of them. However, Liu Bianren and the others were not afraid at this time. They were willing to sacrifice themselves to drag the emperor down from his high horse. Moreover, the opponent was only a nascent soul expert. At worst, they would just die. What was there to be afraid of? Everyone, let's talk this out. Don't act rashly. It's not good for anyone. The guild manager quickly tried to smooth things over. He did not care about the lives of Liu Bianren and the others. But once the two sides fought here, the North Island Cultivators Guild would definitely be in big trouble. If the higher-ups put the blame on them, who could he ask for justice? Unfortunately, whether it was Reckless Spear or Liu Bianren and the others, at this moment, they did not care about his feelings, especially when Reckless Spear was suppressing his anger. In the face of this group of weak cowards, they had jumped over his head. With his tyrannical temper, it would be strange if he could endure it. From today onwards, every one of you is a useless person. Enjoy the life of a useless person who can't see the light of day. Ha ha! Reckless Spear laughed arrogantly. Suddenly, the floor under their feet cracked into 5 cracks without warning. With a sharp whistle that pierced through their eardrums, the cracks spread toward the feet of Liu Bianren and the others. Although the 5 cracks were in the same direction, each of them was pointing at one person. Liu Bianren and the other 4's expressions immediately changed as if they were facing a great enemy. Last time when they fought with Ma Daoguang, they were at a disadvantage because of this move. Once they waited for the sharp thrust of the dagger, they would be finished. Reckless Spear didn't know what exactly it was, but this move of Reckless Spear was really powerful. Even a master in the Gold Core stage couldn't bear such an attack. Moreover, except for Liu Bianren, the others were only in the foundation building stage. The gap in strength was too big, and it was impossible to defend against it even if they wanted to. Reckless Spear looked at this scene and grinned hideously. The backbone and courage of Liu Bianren and the others were really not simple. Unfortunately, in the face of absolute strength, it was just a joke. First, I'll make these idiots disabled, and then I'll see if they are still so stubborn. The cracks spread so fast that before Liu Bianren and the others could react, the 5 deadly cracks had already spread to their feet. Next, they would repeat the same mistake as last time. Once they were hit by the sharp thorns, even if they were lucky enough not to die, they would be half disabled. The wound on Liu Bianren's thigh was still faintly painful. At this time, no matter who was in the position of Liu Bianren and the others, it was absolutely a lie to say that they were not nervous. After all, it was a life-threatening situation. Chapter 4602. What? Are you going to the South Island? It's not necessary to go so far to collect elixirs, is it? Lin glanced at the task wooden plate in Liu Bianren's hand and felt a little moved. Of course, he could guess the purpose of these people risking their lives to go to the South Island. With their little strength, it was absolutely impossible for them to go to the chaotic South Island, but they still made this decision. He must keep this friendship in mind. Junior brother Lin. After being stunned for a long time, they finally came to their senses. Shouting, they rushed up and hugged Lin fiercely. This group of pure men, who were unafraid of death, had red eyes and were full of tears at this moment. This movement immediately attracted the crazy crowd outside. When Lin came in from the task hall, some people with sharp eyes had already recognized his identity. At this moment, hearing Liu Bianren and others' greetings, they were more convinced of Lin Yi's identity. This was the former legendary newcomer king, a super genius that even Shanghai Tianhua thought highly of. The news of Lin Yi's return immediately spread like wildfire. People crowded outside the door to watch the fun. At this moment, except for Lin Yi and Liu Bianren, who had been reunited with each other for a long time, and the guild's steward standing aside in fear, there was only one person left in the door who looked a little pale. Although he had never seen Lin Yi before, he couldn't recognize Lin Yi's identity from the scene in front of him. Then he would just find a piece of tofu and kill himself. This was the person he had been deliberately planning to deal with. More precisely, this was the stepping stone he thought he had to step on. The reason why he came here today was to take a task to go to the South Island to find Lin Yi. Unexpectedly, this guy took the initiative to show up. This kind of situation really made people speechless. For the person who was like a spear, of course, it was a good thing that he didn't have to travel thousands of miles to the South Island. But now he inevitably felt a little unprepared. He couldn't be happy, and his mood was really a little complicated. Junior brother Lin, why did you suddenly come back? Liu Bianren couldn't help but ask, and the nearby senior brothers had surprised expressions as well. They were worried earlier that Lin Yi's fate was unknown, and they didn't hesitate to risk their lives to go against him. Yet never had they imagined that happiness would come so suddenly. Once Lin Yi returned, they could be said to have found their backbone. I'll naturally come back when I'm done with my business. As Lin Yi spoke, he looked around and said to the guild manager, I previously accepted the mission to capture the evil cultivator, Wu Baoyang. Although it has long expired, I still have some time to search for him. However, it has already been completed. This can be proven by the intelligence of the 3 great pavilions. This time, I'm here to hand in the mission. If he hadn't come back to hand in the task, he wouldn't have come to the North Island Cultivators Guild first. Although he had received this task from Jiamu Fan, it was essentially from a North Island Cultivators Guild. If he wanted a hand in the task, he could only come here. Turn in the mission? Evil cultivator Wu Baoyang? Hearing this, the guild manager was stunned. He couldn't help scratching his head and said with a strange expression, but this task has been cancelled. It was senior brother Jiamu Fan of Blue Cloud Pavilion who personally told me about it. Yes, we told senior brother Jia about it. Liu Bianren nodded and said, Oh, okay then. Lin Yi nodded indifferently. As for the reward of the task, he didn't care about it at all. He immediately put his hand on everyone's shoulder and said happily, Then let's hurry back. We haven't seen each other for so long. Let's have a good reunion. With regards to this suggestion, everyone naturally went along with it. They immediately crowded around Lin Yi and left in high spirits. Since Lin Yi had come back, of course, they didn't need to accept the task of the South Island anymore. Even Ma Daiqiang, who had just put a lot of pressure on them, had been forgotten at this moment. Ma Daiqiang's face suddenly turned livid. Lin Yi didn't even look at him from beginning to end. This feeling made him feel like he had become a dispensable clown, being completely ignored. How could he swallow such resentment? Stop! Ma Daiqiang suddenly roared, which attracted everyone's attention. He looked up and down at Lin Yi coldly and pretended to be disdainful. Are you Lin Yi? Oh, who are you? Lin Yi looked back at him and remembered that it was this guy who had attacked Liu Bianren and the others just now. But Lin Yi had resolved it. If he hadn't been too happy to see Liu Bianren and the others, Lin Yi would not have been so arrogant as to forget this guy. No matter who he was, since he dared to attack his brother, he had to be punished. Lin Yi's expression and tone of looking at a passerby stimulated Ma Daiqiang, whose self-esteem was bursting. Before, no matter where he went, he was the protagonist who shone brightly and was sought after. However, now that Lin Yi came, everyone's attention was unconsciously focused on him. Ma Daiqiang, the super rookie king who thought highly of himself, didn't even have the treatment of being looked at. I'm your grandfather, Ma Daiqiang angrily blurted out on the spot. A mere stepping stone that was about to be stepped on by him dared to put on airs in front of him. He really didn't know what was good for him. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. Their gazes towards Ma Daiqiang subconsciously became a bit lighter. Although they were indeed very optimistic about this super rookie king of the original infant stage, experts needed to have a bearing. Only an ant-like commoner would open his mouth and say that he was their grandfather. Ma Daiqiang's bearing was really not flattering. Oh, under everyone's gaze, Lin Yi didn't have the slightest intention of getting angry. He just looked at this guy indifferently, then turned to the side and asked, Senior Ku, where did this madman come from? As soon as these words came out, there was a sudden uproar outside the door. Due to Ma Daiqiang's strength, they didn't dare to ridicule him. However, when Lin Yi said this, there was a clear hint of sympathy on his face. A dignified, super rookie king of the original infant stage was actually treated as a madman. How could people endure this if word got out? This was the first time Lin Yi, the previous rookie king, and Ma Daiqiang, the current rookie king, met face to face. It was like Mars colliding with Earth. It was already a gimmick, but when Lin Yi said this, it added a bit of tension. The audience outside the door suddenly became interested, and more people gathered after hearing the news. Even the door of the room was about to be trampled. Senior Ku explained to Lin, "This person is called Ma Daiqiang. He is also a disciple of our Blue Cloud Pavilion." Chapter 4603. Noisy. Lin Yi pursed his lips when he saw the lackey trying to intimidate him. He stretched out his left hand and waved it slightly. An invisible force immediately sent the lackey flying. He screamed and fell into the crowd. The crowd behind him kicked him and stomped him into a human cushion. It was a pitiful sight. As the saying goes, you have to look at the master before you beat a dog. You dare to hit my lackey in front of me. It looks like you're ready to fight me? I've seen arrogant people before, but it's the first time I've seen such an arrogant idiot like you. Ma Daoqiang's face darkened. Lin Yi's move was not a big deal in his eyes, but since he dared to send his lackey flying, it was equivalent to a declaration of war. Hee, you flatter me. You should give this kind of evaluation to yourself. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently. He still had a smile on his face and said, "Newcomer king, right? Oh, nice to meet you, newcomer king. But even if you're the newcomer king, there's no need to be so pretentious, right? Even I, the pretentious leader, have to admit that I'm inferior." Pretentious? Ma Daoqiang subconsciously looked at his lackey who was still wailing at the foot of the crowd. He thought to himself, who the fuck is pretentious? No wonder he's the pretentious leader. He then sneered and said, "I heard that you're the previous newcomer king. Oh, that's old news. I haven't been a newcomer king for many years. Hearing people say that makes me feel like I'm pretending to be young and inexperienced. I'll be laughed at." Lin Yi smiled playfully. The crowd outside the door burst into laughter when they heard that. The smell of gunpowder on both sides was getting stronger and stronger. Normal people knew that the two newcomer kings would definitely fight today. There were even some nosy people who had already opened bets. Although most people felt that Ma Daoqiang, the original infant stage newcomer king, had a higher chance of winning, in terms of temperament, it was obvious that Lin Yi had the upper hand. Hearing the roar of laughter from the crowd, Ma Daoqiang couldn't help but feel like he was being played like a monkey. He knew that he wouldn't be able to gain any advantage by talking big. He could only fly into a rage out of humiliation. It's useless to only know how to talk. That's what trash does. You and I are both rookie kings. Since we've coincidentally met today, do you dare to challenge me? At this moment, there was only one thought in Ma Dang's mind. Only strength is the way of the king. When this guy is stepped on by me, let's see if he can still smile. It's not wrong to call you a madman. Do you think I have nothing better to do than to challenge you? You want to bite anyone you see? Are you rabid? If you're sick, treat it quickly. Don't delay. Lin Yi frowned slightly. Then, without saying anything, he suddenly released his whole body's momentum. Chapter 4604. I really don't understand. Even if you're a middle-stage original level cultivator, so what? Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. I'm stronger than you. Ma Daqiang looked at Lin Yi's expression. He felt as if he'd punched empty air, and that little bit of joy he'd been feeling vanished without a trace. He smiled coldly as he said, "Are you playing dumb, or are you really dumb? Are you so scared that you can't even tell the difference in cultivation level? Or is it that you, a mere early-stage original level cultivator, think you have the ability to act tough in front of me? Oh, so you're talking about this. I thought you knew me very well. You haven't even heard of my most basic specialty, and you dare to provoke me with that? Haven't you heard of the saying, know thyself and know thy enemy? Haven't you been educated? Lenny chuckled nonchalantly. Specialty? Ma Dang froze for a moment and then coldly snorted, I've heard of it. Everyone says that you, the former newcomer king, are very good at acting tough. Do you admit that you're the head of acting tough? Oomph. But seeing that we're from the same sect, I'll give you a sentence out of kindness. Only those with strength can be called acting tough. Those without strength are called idiots. The title of head of acting tough doesn't suit weaklings like you. I'll reluctantly take it on for you. Ha ha ha. Hee hee. I didn't expect you to be so warm-hearted. Since you want it so much, then I'll give it to you. I don't care about this title anyway. Lin E faintly smiled and then continued. But since you said we're from the same sect, then I'll remind you out of morality, lest you say I'm bullying you. Oh, then I'll give you this chance. If you have anything to say it quickly. Otherwise, you'll say I don't respect you. I didn't even give you this chance. No matter what, you're the former newcomer king. Even if you're past your prime, I still have to give you some face. Ma Dang pretended to be polite. Every time he opened his mouth, he talked about newcomer king. It seemed like this brat had made up his mind to use him as a stepping stone. Lin E clearly saw the horse's intention to use as a spear. What I'm best at isn't actually showing off, but fighting against those with higher cultivation levels. So, I'll say the ugly words first. Not to mention the middle stage of nascent soul. I've even killed a profound ascending stage cultivator. You better be mentally prepared. Mysterious ascension stage. Everyone was stunned, and then they all took a deep breath. Some of them hadn't even heard of this realm, let alone seen it in person. Lin E could even kill a mystic ascending stage master? This isn't a joke, right? Ma Daoqiang was just as stunned as everyone else. After a while, he suddenly burst into laughter, pointing at Lin E and gasping for breath. He said, ha 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 ha, I don't think you're a pretentious person. In fact, you're just a braggart, right? Even if it was a little troublesome, Lin E couldn't sit back and do nothing anymore. Now that you mention it, it's you who attacked senior brother Ku Bienren and others just now, right? Lin E looked at Ma Daoqiang calmly and said, Yes, it's me. Now you want to stand up for them? Ma Daoqiang sneered fearlessly and said, Oh, by the way, I can tell you one more thing. Last time, if someone hadn't disturbed me, they would have died in my hands. If you don't believe me, you can ask senior brother Ku Bienren if the wound on his thigh is completely healed. Ha ha! Is that true? Lin E turned his head and asked. Senior brother Ku Bienren and others looked at each other and nodded. Although it was dishonorable, there was nothing to hide, especially in front of Lin E. Anyway, he would know it sooner or later. Okay, I got it. As you wish. Lin Yi's temperament suddenly became colder. Since Ma Daoqiang had almost killed senior brother Ku Bienren and others, he couldn't be regarded as a simple clown, but a thorough enemy. Since he was an enemy, there was no need to be polite. He just stood there quietly, looking at Ma Jingjing, who thought that victory was in his grasp. Yo, as expected of the previous rookie king. Disregarding everything else, he was quite tactful. He knew that he couldn't run, so he decided not to run. Right? Haha, you have guts, but it's a pity that your life isn't long enough. Ma Daoqiang continued to seize the opportunity to ridicule. In his eyes, Lin, he was already a dead man. Are you saying that my life isn't long enough? Then I'll wait and see. Maybe God won't let me die so early? Lin, he smiled faintly. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at the guild manager who was hiding in a corner, trembling with fear. Could you please bring me a stool? I'm travel-weary and can rest my feet. Ah, a stool? The guild manager was suddenly dumbfounded. If it weren't for his position, he would have fled far away like the others. Why would he stay here and wait to be buried with others? However, with his identity, if he just ran away and let the North Island Cultivators Guild become a ruin, he would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. It was better to stay and use the trick of injuring himself to gain confidence. Maybe he could get a reward for sticking to his post. seeing that the guild manager was trembling with fear and didn't dare to move, Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. He pulled a stool from his side. He just sat down calmly in front of Ma Daoqiang, as if nothing had happened. Looking at this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. What was going on? He knew that he couldn't beat Ma Daoqiang, so he simply admitted defeat. But it didn't look like it. But it was absolutely impossible for Lin Yi to ignore Ma Daoqiang's attack. In any case, Ma Daoqiang's strength was superior. It didn't make sense that a master at the peak of the early stage of nascent soul could ignore the killer move of a master at the middle stage of nascent soul, right? Everyone was just shocked. At this moment, Ma Daoqiang, who was standing opposite Lin Yi, was about to go crazy. To be honest, although he was determined to trample Lin Yi under his feet, since Lin Yi showed the strength of the early stage of nascent soul, he had already put away the thought of underestimating his enemy. Combined with the past rumors about Lin Yi, he knew that this guy was not so easy to deal with. But he still had absolute confidence in himself. The birth of the Earth Dragon could even kill a master at the middle stage of nascent soul, let alone a master at the peak of the early stage of nascent soul. I don't care what you're trying to do, I'll kill you first. Ma Daoqiang was sure that Lin Yi was definitely bluffing. His birth of the Earth Dragon was already prepared. This was his trump card. Not only was it extremely powerful, but it also had a very fatal right after it was used. Every martial art had a time to be used. The only difference was that it was a little faster and a little slower. With the time, it meant that there was a flaw, which meant that it could be targeted. But Ma Daoqiang's birth of the Earth Dragon was out of this norm. This was not because it didn't have a time to be used, but because it had a backup right. After the birth of the Earth Dragon was used, as long as Ma Daoqiang could use his divine sense to lock onto his opponent, then he could control the time of the Earth Dragon's birth at will. From a beginning to the end, the Earth Dragon would be entrenched under the opponent's feet. With a single thought, the opponent would be hit. The whole process would not leave any time for the opponent to react. If the opponent dared to make a move at this time, then he would definitely be courting death. This was the so-called backup right, and also Ma Daoqiang's most terrifying trump card. And during this process, the longer the Earth Dragon was held, the more powerful it would be. Therefore, it could be said that Ma Daoqiang had the initiative from the beginning to the end. Unless Lin Yi took the initiative to attack before he made a move, there was no suspense at all in this battle. At least in Ma Daoqiang's eyes, there was no suspense at all. Ma Daoqiang originally wanted to take advantage of the flaw in Lin Yi's attack. But looking at Lin Yi's current posture, he didn't have the slightest intention of making a move. Since he couldn't wait for Lin Yi to make a move, he could only take the initiative to gain the upper hand. After all, if the Earth Dragon was held down for too long, something would happen. Its current power was already enough to kill any peak early nascent soul realm expert. He didn't believe that Lin Yi could block it. Chapter 4606. Everyone's nerves shuddered. Many people didn't even care about their image and fell to the ground. Everyone thought that in the next second, everything within a 10-mile radius would be turned into ruins. However, 1 breath passed, 2 breaths passed, 3 breaths passed. Everyone who fell to the ground raised their heads in confusion. Why wasn't there any movement at all? Everyone was staring at Ma Daoqiang. This original infant stage super newcomer, was he toying with them? Looking at Ma Daoqiang again, he no longer had the arrogance and confidence he had before. Instead, he was drenched in cold sweat because of this strange scene. Why wasn't there any movement at all? Explode. 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 Ma Daoqiang was going crazy. Suddenly, he screamed hysterically, almost causing everyone to have a nervous breakdown. However, the result was the same as before. There was no movement at all. Looking at Lin Yi now, not only was he sitting there calmly, he had even brewed a pot of spiritual tea and was drinking it leisurely. As he drank, he looked at Ma Daoqiang as if he was watching a monkey show. Liu Bianren, senior brother Ku Bai, and the others looked at each other. Their hearts that were hanging in the air were now at ease. Though they didn't know what exactly happened, at least they knew that everything was under Lin Yi's control. Ma Daoqiang was truly enraged this time. His face was as red as a pig's liver. However, he didn't have the slightest reaction. The Earth Dragon's emergence, which had worked every time in the past, was like mud sinking into the ocean this time. There was no reaction at all, let alone controlling it freely. He couldn't even sense it. It seems like your Earth Dragon isn't that good. Why don't you try the power of my dragon? He took a sip of spiritual tea, a stark contrast to the hysterical Ma Duqiang. Ma Duqiang cursed angrily. However, he didn't even have the time to fart. Suddenly, he felt an extremely sharp and terrifying murderous aura surging out from the bottom of his feet. Indistinctly, it seemed to be accompanied by a soft dragon's roar. In the next moment, in front of everyone present, Ma Daojian actually let out a miserable howl. His knees went soft, and he directly knelt before Lin Yi. The crowd burst into an uproar. Everyone had a look of disbelief on their faces. What the fuck was going on? He was just sitting there leisurely drinking tea. Why did he suddenly kneel down in front of him? And he looked like he was in pain? Don't be like this. The fight hasn't even started yet. Why are you kowtowing and admitting defeat? Strange things happen every year. I'm really speechless. He continued to drink the spiritual tea leisurely. He didn't even lift his eyelids. Impossible. This was impossible. Absolutely impossible. Ma Duqiang cried out in pain. Cold sweat dripped down his face as he looked at Lin Yi. He didn't dare to believe that he would actually lose. Moreover, he would lose in such a way that he couldn't understand at all. Both of his hands protected his knees that were in so much pain that they were about to lose feeling. Glaring bright red blood gushed out uncontrollably. In a short moment, a large patch of the surrounding floor was dyed red. Coupled with Ma Daoqiang's hysterical howls of pain, the entire place fell into a strange silence. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Ma Duqiang, this original infant stage super newcomer king, had always been high and mighty. No matter where he appeared, he would always be arrogant. However, at this moment, the pitiful scene in front of him caused everyone to unconsciously feel a trace of sympathy. To Ma Duqiang, who thought highly of himself, any little bit of so-called sympathy was the greatest humiliation to him. If it was a normal day, if someone dared to look at him like this, Ma Duqiang would definitely fly into a rage and start a fight. But now he couldn't do it. He couldn't even stand up. He could only kneel in front of Lin Yi in extreme humiliation. His dignity and self-confidence were torn apart along with his miserable howls. What else could he use to teach these people a lesson? Fear. At this moment, Ma Duqiang's heart was only filled with deep fear. His mind was blank. He couldn't understand what had just happened. He couldn't understand why he would lose to a mere peak early-stage, original infant stage expert. Moreover, it was in such a strange and evil way. He didn't even dare to believe what he was experiencing at this moment, and he wondered if this was all a dream. He was a mid-stage, original infant stage expert. He was the super newcomer king. He was the invincible and invincible existence in the inner court competition of the three pavilions. He had subverted everyone's understanding and was destined to be a legend in the history of the three pavilions. How could he lose in such a strange and humiliating way? This was absolutely impossible. Ma Duqiang was still deceiving himself. However, the spectators on the side wouldn't be stupid like him. Although no one understood what happened, they at least understood one thing. The collision between the two newcomer kings had already been decided. With just one move, Ma Duqiang, the new super newcomer king, was completely defeated. And he was defeated so miserably that people couldn't even look straight at him. For a moment, everyone looked at Lin Yi with unparalleled awe. In their eyes, a peak early stage, original infant stage expert was already a high and powerful existence, especially a legendary figure like Lin Yi. They needed to look up to him and didn't dare to show any disrespect. Before this, everyone thought that Ma Duqiang would become the new legend of the three pavilions in the North Island. But now, even a fool wouldn't think so. A legend was a legend after all.